Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. I am James Jones. I'm joined today by Mr. Guillaume Vayette.
Hello, hello.
Mr. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
And not Mr. John Lindemann. We don't know if he'll be here or not. He isn't right now, and it's been 40 minutes, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. It is January 2nd, 2025, and it's been a couple weeks since I've been with these gentlemen. We recorded 2 episodes about 2 weeks ago, and then never really haven't gotten back to it since then. This is episode 908. If you missed over the holidays, we recorded 906, which was an email focus segment where we talked about our top, how our top games list evolved. And then most of the episode was devoted to a John Lindemann trivia segment.
Maybe that's why he's not here.
Maybe.
Today. I don't know. It would be too much Lindemann for a single month, or I don't know.
As a consequence of recording, editing, and then listening, because I'm recording on new hardware. I've only recorded 2 episodes on this hardware, so you're trying to figure shit out. And a new version of Audacity that I very much don't like. I had to listen to both those episodes in their entirety to make sure that there wasn't anything shitty going on. There was, by the way. I think I've got it fixed. I have heard that segment at least 3.5 times now, and I will never be the same, is the consequence of that. So, if you miss those episodes because you were out during the holidays, you weren't listening to podcasts, whatever, they're still out there for you. They're more or less not timely in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, the second one was our Professor Layton retroactive, so you can go listen to those. They're still out there. They both have completely outrageous names. I think one of them is Lot Lizard John and his one big puzzle arm. And the other one is Greg and I both went man flesh. So there's nothing good to be made of those episode titles, but they're out there. You can go listen. We're going to go ahead and just start with some new business this week. And I forgot to ask these guys what they've been playing. I know at least some of what Guillaume's been playing because I played it too. Greg, do you have Nintendo stuff to start us off with?
Yeah, I wish I had more that I could kind of go into, but I've still just been chipping away at the Mario and Luigi Brothership. It's still not over. Admittedly, I've not been pouring time into it at some sort of torrid pace. Just the time of year and various circumstances just haven't really allowed for that. But still, it's kind of, it is a surprise to me that it's still kind of, going on. I think I've put 40 hours in at this point, which again, the first time I spoke about this was...
It's not nothing.
Long enough ago that it's I would have assumed I could have got more in that time. It just hasn't happened. But, I'm still not there at the end of it. So I'm really confident, at least now, that I am close. It is enough is apparent in the scenario that it's okay, the finish line is fairly within sight. So, I'm kind of inclined to wait a little bit longer before kind of going into any real depth on it. I may as well at this juncture just kind of see the resolution and how it all comes together at that point. I mean, it's I'm a little bit hesitant to keep waiting because we did the Layton retroactive and I got through that in a couple of weeks. So, it's obviously a much shorter game, right? It's probably only about 10 hours, but, and that's some of the reason, obviously, that this has taken as long as it has is because I kind of broke off from it for those couple of weeks for the most part and played Layton instead. But, so even in those 2 weeks, I think when I was talking about it on the retroactive, I managed to conflate a couple of puzzles and just there was something about rounding off an answer and all that. And then when I heard back, it's just no, that's completely right. That's a different puzzle I'm thinking. So, I mean, if I start, talking about Mario and Luigi Brothership and going back to the early parts of it, it might be complete bullshit because that was literally months ago at this point. So the likelihood that it's going to be reliable is dubious, but I guess when I do get to it, I'll try and concentrate on the back end because that will be the most reliably informative things that I've got to share at that point.
Okay. Anything else?
No, not really. Just been the usual kind of work going through, touching on some, NSO stuff here or there, just with spare moments, but nothing in depth.
So no kind of I don't know, shotgun impressions of like tidbits of anything.
No. Like I say, it's been quiet. It's been quiet, as you'd expect, really, with the holidays. And indeed, like with NSO and all that, it's been a relatively kind of quiet period, hasn't it? They haven't put like new things out yet or whatever. I assume we're all just in kind of wait and see mode now. We assume, once we get into January, obviously you got DK, the HD, kind of up-res of that, and we just wait, presumably some NSO updates and potentially, some big stuff if they get around to, we know it's going to be before the end of March. We don't know that they've got to say anything about the Switch successor in January, but I suppose they could. So, yeah, it's just the calm before the storm, probably.
Yep. Yeah, it's different because there's still stuff coming out versus last time we went through this, where
certainly, yeah.
Nothing had come out for over a year. This is the week of bundles, by the way. I love finding 9-in-1 bundle, Trips to Europe 5-in-1 bundle, Mystery Box 4-in-1 bundle, Heart of Dice bundle, Hunt or Hunted bundle, and then 2 games with the same art style. One called Creative Writing: Unlock Your Inner Author. The other, the Hair Care: How to Maintain and Style Healthy Hair. So, things are fine. Things are fine on the eShop. Why do you ask? I'm a little curious about Anime Girls: Natty New Year. Like, natty? Like, natural? Is that what we're going for here?
That
I don't
sounds
know.
like a British idiom. Not one I've heard in a long time.
Nice.
I do pretty much exist in a very small bubble that largely excludes British media. Natty would be like, sort of stylish, maybe?
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Like if you were wearing something like natty, it would be, like it's kind of sharp or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's been that long since I've heard that in context. It could be maybe there's some other, corner of the world that has a completely different kind of connotation for that.
It's anime girls and yukatas. So, like, I guess you could say that they're looking sharp, although I think they're all wearing the same one, which is fucked up. It's fucked up, man. So yeah, that's eShop's fine. eShop's great. Why do you ask? All right, I guess I can go through some of the stuff I did over the holidays. So, starting out, I started the holiday continuing on with Indiana Jones. Guillaume's also been playing it, so I'll save that for when we transition between the two of us. After that, I took advantage of the sale. I bought the Wario game that isn't the second WarioWare game on Switch, although I haven't really had a chance to play it yet. I bought Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which has been on my wish list since it came out, but I never actually got around to it. And I'll talk about that first. So I played the whole thing in about 2 days because it's weird. It's not short, but it doesn't take very long to get through, if that makes sense, including the Kirby games where there's an ending, but then actually, no, there's a whole other ending you have to go through and do some more stuff. Which is really just remixes of levels from the main game. For those of you who haven't played it, it's a 3D Kirby game. We've had a few of those. But it's still relatively novel. And in it, there are a bunch of Waddle Dees that have been hidden, either through objectives you have to complete in the level, like, eat 3 hidden snacks, which are food items you can't see because they're blocked on the camera from something.
It was quite novel for Kirby as being 3D to this extent, was it? To go somewhere, somewhere basically approaching a Kirby equivalent of a Super Mario 3D Land or world. Obviously, there's been many games with Kirby's, with the graphics being represented with polygons,
true.
but this kind of gameplay and level design is actually new. Pretty much.
Yeah, that's true. Like we've had a 3D Kirby game in the past, but it was kind of 2.5D a little bit. You're right. This is like a true 3D game. But it's, I guess I try to word this right. I guess it didn't really register to me how novel it was because how much it just felt like exactly what I assume a 3D Kirby game was going to be.
Well, we talked about this, when we recorded a couple of weeks ago, talking about that Super Mario 3D Land, was kind of what I originally, as a kid, imagined a 3D Mario game to be like.
Right.
But in the interim, they did more different things that were more about kind of, I guess, coming to grips with and kind of developing their sense of what 3D game design could be in general, rather than just for Mario. And to some extent, it was kind of the groundwork for Zelda, what would become Ocarina of Time and everything else they would do in 3D in general, rather than just let's take Super Mario Brothers and put it in the third dimension. And so I guess with Kirby, it's interesting coming to that problem so much later. They just kind of went straight to the literal case. Yeah. And I guess to some extent it feels a little bit less novel because Super Mario 3D Land exists.
Right. Yeah, and that's definitely part of it. You can see the cues it's taking in a lot of ways. I mean, Super Mario 3D Land in particular did a lot of that, like, find things hidden behind a piece of stage geometry. It's there, you just can't see it kind of stuff, because it would do camera tricks and things to hide things, and the 3D part would get used for that too. And then in the stages, there's also lots of like hidden paths or like hidden passages or little mini puzzles you have to solve that lets you find Waddle Dee that are also just hidden around in the stage. I think there's like, I would say roughly 30-ish stages and then a bunch of these treasure runs, which are little mini stages that have you test one piece of functionality. Either it's one power up or one of Kirby's mouthful mode things, and you use those to get the rare stones that you use to upgrade the equipment. I have upgraded all the equipment, so I have them all. I've got, I think my percentage is like 87% complete, and that's enough for me. I don't need to go find all the Waddle Dee. It's just not worth it. I think my thing on this game is this is my well-made game, clearly made for professionals, I think. By professionals, rather. Not for professionals. Because functionally and mechanically, I am able to say, like, this game is quite good. But it's doing a ton of things that just frustrated me. Things that just slowed it down. I'll give you an example. Kirby finds a blueprint for an outfit in a stage. He returns to, he clears the level. He returns to the Waddle Dee village. The camera stops what it's doing, pans all the way to the costume shop, plays a fanfare to tell you that you can now upgrade whatever costume you found the blueprint for. Doesn't let you press A to advance that text until the fanfare is finished reading or finished playing, which you'd have to be the slowest reader on earth to need that time. Then lets you advance it. Then you go into the costume shop, at which point Kirby walks up to the counter to hand the costume maker the blueprint. That triggers another set of dialogue that you can't just hammer through. At which point it pans over to where the costume is that you can now upgrade. The shop's not that big. I'd have found it on my own. And then you go over there and say, I'd like to upgrade. It goes to a unskippable fanfare again. And then you get a video of the person making the upgrade. You can actually skip that. That's the first time in any of those exchanges you can skip any goddamn thing. And while that may not seem like a big deal, there's a ton of these. And that's an example. It's not the only time it does shit like this, where it's like, no, you gotta listen to the whole fanfare before you can press A. And that may not seem like a big deal, but over time, stuff like that, stuff where it feels like it's wasting your time to show you this animation you've seen 30 times already. And it's not just those. It's the treasure. It's the rare stones. It's unboxing presents that get left for you, where it plays a fanfare of what was in the present, but then makes you manually pick it up so it can play the exact same fanfare to tell you what it already told you was in the present yet again. It's just little stuff like that where I'm like, this is completely unnecessary. Why? Why is there, like, I get that this was meant to be charming, but it really isn't. It's the Kirby dance that he does at the end of stages. Sometimes he does it, and it's like, okay, this is like the fourth time we've seen it. Can we just not? Okay, we're gonna do it anyway. That's fine. I don't know. Like a lot of times decisions made in this game just grated on me. It'd be like, why do we have to watch this? Why do we have to sit through this? Why do we have to do this thing? Why is it that I have to go into a scene, go find the rare stone, come out, see the animation that I found the rare stone, even though you've already put it in my inventory, and then go back out? My favorite one was the treasure. There's a person that you can give them codes, and Nintendo had a bunch of codes on the various websites. And you get a treasure and you open it and there's prizes in it. And I needed 3 rare stones because there's not enough rare stones in the game to upgrade all the costumes. Just out of curiosity, if you have every rare stone, it's not enough. You can farm them in the battle arena, or you can use the code from the website and get 3 of them. Which is what I ended up doing. And it plays an animation telling you what was in the box when you open it, which is 3 rare stones individually, a bucket of money, and some other pickup. I can't remember what it was. And then it plays an animation it tells you in the screen what a text prompt, like 3 rare stone, 3x, 600 coins, the other thing. And then it makes you pick them all up individually and plays the animation for each one. And I'm like, this is infuriating. Why would you do it this way? Why not when I just open the box, you put it all in my inventory? It's not like I'm going to leave them behind. There's nothing to leave them for. There's no cost to picking them up. Just for fuck's sake. And so that's, again, this feels really minor. But man, I was just hammering through these stages, and then it stopped to wait for fanfare to play. It's like, man, I just kind of wish this game's pacing was a little bit cleaner. It's a Kirby game. The challenge isn't going to be high. I died a couple times for one of the last bosses. Some of the bosses just have too many iframes, or rather not iframes. It's a lack of hurt frames, like places where you can actually cause damage to them. So you'll get into the situation where there's a boss you really can't hurt, because he's flying up somewhere. And maybe if you're in a specific power-up with the gun, you can hurt them. But most of the time, you're just watching it fly around, waiting to dodge its next attack. Like, the fight's not hard. It's just, it just feels slow as a consequence of that. The final boss in particular, the true final boss, the one you fight in the mode that's unlocked after you roll credits the first time. That boss felt like it took forever. I ran it again a second time with the fully upgraded crash power-up, time crash, and it did not take forever. Time crash, which is the fully powered up crash, is a one-time use skill that is completely broken in an amazing way, and I strongly encourage playing with that. It's like some of the power-ups are really good. Some of them are kind of useless. Some of them feel like they're too strong as it is. The fire one, the fully up dragon fire, is so fucking strong. It's so strong. Basically, it's the Omni tool for any boss fight. Because it sets the boss on fire, so they take more damage. 2, it can stun lock them. And 3, you can basically just fire it forever. Just by just holding down the button. So, and the more they're burned, the more it compounds the damage it does. So, like, the whole thing is just way too powerful. Ice fully upgraded is similar because it can freeze the boss, but it doesn't have the immediacy of fire, so it's not quite as broken. But shit like Tornado fully upgraded really isn't a very useful boss fighting skill. So it does feel like you just end up using the same 3 or 4 skills. The fully upgraded Ranger skill, Space Ranger, is pretty goddamn powerful. But yeah, it's what's the best way of putting it? It's a Kirby game. Like, the difficulty is what it is. It's not going to be huge. Even on the highest difficulty, it's not that hard. When I lost, oftentimes it was, I was trying to get something hidden behind a stage, and so it was just really hard to not get hit by the big, crusher that was doing a ton of damage. So, like, it wasn't because the complexity of the game mechanics. It was more just like, I can't tell if I'm under the crusher or if I'm in the little safety gap where the hidden Waddle Dee is. No, I was in the path of the crusher. Fuck. Okay, I died. That sucks. Or it was a boss that just the boss fight went on. The last boss fight feels like a Retro Studios boss, where it's like this boss just never wants to end. It's like, he's got a third mode. Get ready for that. It's like, seriously? Okay, I guess. But yeah, the game is, I have a lot of issues with the game because it just didn't quite hit me right. It is very good. It is very well made. The team that made it did a very good job, but it's just, man, there is some stuff here that's just, you could have made this better. You could have made that smoother. You could have made it more quick to get through. And you made the choice that was the slowest possible choice. And I don't love that for me, personally. Because by the end, look, that's a lot of Kirby. And I don't think that all the stages do much to justify their existence. There are some stages that have really novel ideas and are really fun. There's a few of those in the Carnival. The Carnival's like the third area. There's 4 more areas after it. There are some stages where they just kind of feel like they don't really stand out in any particular way. And they do take a while to get through. It's not like a Mario Land stage or even a Mario 3D World stage where by and large you can get through them in, 2 or 3 minutes. Some of these stages in Forgotten Land are 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes long. And that's especially frustrating if the objective you're trying to accomplish to get the Waddle Dee can only be attempted one time, and it's at the end of the stage. It's like, well, fuck, I have to go replay this whole stage? I don't want to do that. Some of the areas that have, like, I don't know how best to describe them. They're basically on rail. They're either with the car or they're with the roller coaster. I think there's 1 or 2 with the vending machine, where you essentially run a gauntlet and there is stuff in it that you can miss. There is the ability to rerun that gauntlet at the end, but it ungets everything you got, so you have to get everything again, so you have to do a clean run. But the stages are where it's more like, man, I screwed this up, and I just wanted to get... I missed one of the hidden ice creams, and now I can't go back and look for it. I have to replay this whole damn stage to get it. And in a long stage, that can be kind of taxing. But, yeah, I mean, still, it's, like I said, it's good. It just, there are some things that could have been done to make the experience more smooth, and I wish they had done them. Also, let me hit A during your fanfare. I don't need to hear the fanfare again. I don't hear ba 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 over every single time. I'm good. Thank you. It is the most, like, it seems minor, but God, did it start to piss me off by the end of the game. I'm just hammering A going, I know I have the thing. That's why I went out to that stage and got it. Stop. And then you go back inside in the room, it tells you again. If you have multiple, it made you read multiple lines of text about the fact you could go unlock these upgrades. I'm like, oh my God, just stop it. Just stop it. Yeah, it's fine. Like, the game is good. The game's well made. The team did a good job, but man, there's some stuff I just wish they had done a little bit better. Also, that game's almost 2 years old. That's wild to me. But yeah, like I said, I don't regret the time I spent with it. I probably spent about 15 hours on it, and I'm done. The only thing I'm missing is some of the Waddle Dees, and I just don't care enough to go get them. So, and there's another collectible you get in that last post boss, or in that post credits series of stages. Fuck that. No interest in hunting down the ones I'm still missing of that. None. Zero. Absolutely no interest. Didn't need to get them all anyway, thank God. So, yeah, I'm good. So yeah, besides that, we've talked about it in the past, that this is usually the time of year where I buy something that I just know I'm never going to talk about on the show, and because nobody's going to care. I did that. I'll actually name it this time. I almost never name them. Like, I almost always just go like, nah, y'all don't even need to know what that is because y'all don't even care that much. I decided for whatever dumb fucking reason I wanted to get well, I'll give the reason. So I got the weird, I don't even know if it's a visual novel. It's kind of like a weird hybrid role thing of the KONOSUBA visual novel on Switch, mostly because I was like, why the fuck is this even a thing? I watched that series recently. On the perversion scale, it's like a 40 out of 10. But it's done in a way where every character is the worst character in the world and you hate them all. And the perversion is actually made to make the audience upset. Like, it's actually like, oh, this is revolting. Why are they like this? I hate every character in this show. Which is impressive. It's really hard to make a show where every character is worse than the next one. But not like in like, we're just going to make them all evil. We're going to make them all so deeply flawed. You're like, nope, don't stand this person. So it does fan service in a way that turns the audience off, which I really appreciate. That's actually really funny to me. So I find that shit fucking hilarious. I will give this thing credit. I've only really gotten about halfway through it. One, it is probably, originally these were light novels in Japan. They got turned into a series. I'm going to guess it's written by the light novel author because the writing is dead on. But every single line of text in this fucking thing is voice acted by the voice actors from the show in Japan, which is fucking unbelievable because there's a shitload of text. I can't believe they fucking did every line. It's so ridiculous. The scenario, it's you know, it's a fantasy world isekai, but they're making fun of those shows pretty hard. So like you have a character with unbelievable magic stat, but she has 0 luck and 0 intelligence. So she just does dumb shit the whole time. And she's just the worst. She's just the worst. I hate her. I hate her so much. Or a character with incredibly high defense, but no accuracy. So she's the tank, but she can't hit. She literally is, by rules of the world, incapable of hitting enemies. So she just stands there and doesn't accomplish anything. And also she's a fucking masochist. Literally. So it's like, oh, this is just, and everyone else is upset about the entire arrangement, including the audience. So that's fun. They did a really nice job of like getting all like delivering really amusing and fucked up shit in this thing that made me uncomfortable multiple times as I'm going through it. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to make you uncomfortable. Mission fucking accomplished. So yeah, I'm enjoying that as kind of just a really low effort thing to do. I did it on the elliptical for like an hour today, just read it. And that was kind of like the mindless activity I needed. But yeah, it's stupid and weird, and I don't recommend it for anybody unless you're a fan of the show, which I kind of recommend. But also, like I said, it is deeply perverted in a way that everyone's aware of, and it's not meant to be, sexually gratifying for the audience. Let's put it that way. The characters might be, but everyone else is really upset about it. But if you like the show, hey, this thing exists. I didn't know it existed. I only know it existed because it was on the sale list. And it turns out it's pretty good. It's made by mages, so it's not surprising they made a competent visual novel. I'm just kind of dumbfounded by how much money got spent on it. Because seemingly a fucking lot of money got spent on it because it's fully voice acted. Besides that, a couple other small things. I'm going to just kind of let them go because they're not really super important. I did the Tetris DX that came out on the Game Boy. That came out, I think, right before our last recording session. I feel like Tetris DX might be easier than the original Tetris because I don't remember being able to go this long in the original Tetris. Maybe it's the color. Maybe just having the color like allows my brain to process what I'm looking at faster. But I felt like at one point I was basically just able to go as long as I wanted. And like I got into level 20 something. Like I was just kind of jamming through it. So, ultimately though, it's Tetris. It doesn't even have, the keep functionality. Like this is basic Tetris. So, yeah. Besides that, it's Indiana Jones and I've beaten it. I've seen the secret ending, which takes some extra effort, but it's not really worth it. So if you're trying to decide if it's worth it or not, it's not. It's not. Just YouTube it. Guillaume, but you've also been playing it. So I've already talked about it. So I'm going to let you kind of lead on this one.
Yeah, I'm still like in the middle of it. I'm still in the Gisa, so that's the second big, area that you explore outside of the prologue. I'm really enjoying it. I wasn't sure I would enjoy it, but because I don't especially enjoy stealth games in the first place, especially not first-person stealth games. And my previous experiences with Machine Games, the studio that made this game, they've made some Wolfenstein games, and I tried them at some point, and I didn't care for them. for whatever reason. Like, one of my biggest problems with a lot of these stealth slash, what do they call them? Sims?
Immersive sims.
Immersive sims, is that...
I hate that name.
A lot of them, like the studios who make them, very clearly optimize them, play them on PC. Optimize them for PC, for a keyboard and mouse. This game doesn't do that. It's a lot more streamlined. Makes a lot more sense to play with a controller. So the fact that it plays really well helps a lot. So it turns out that maybe I don't mind first-person immersive sims as much when they're actually made in a way that makes sense.
They took a lot, like I mentioned Hitman when I talked about this game, but the other thing that they took a lot from is MGS5. Like, there's a lot of MGS5 DNA in this game, and you can feel it.
Yeah, I haven't played that.
And those games both work really well with controller. And yeah, you're right. This game feels like it was designed controller first. Makes sense. It was an Xbox game originally, and then it got expanded into the PS5 space.
Yeah.
It's not out yet, but it went from an Xbox exclusive to not, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So, and I'm glad more people are going to be able to play it, I guess. But, I don't know, like, I've spent so many hours just like going along walls, hoping that I was distant enough from the Nazis for them not to see me, like just like playing, cat and mouse with them, I guess, and just trying to sneak up on them. Like, you just told me before we started recording that you can find the fascist disguise costume, very. You found it very early in your game. I didn't find it in the Italy segment. And
so to give context to that, every area has its own costumes, which you can use to fool some of the guards. Again, it's very Hitman, where there are some guards who aren't fooled by your costume. In fact, it mechanically works the same way, where they're like, "Hey, what's that guy over there? He looks weird." And then as they get closer, eventually they sound the alarm.
Right.
So it's basically your hint to get the fuck out of there. But most people just don't pay any mind, and that you just walk right past them.
Yeah, but there are going to be like areas where like you can walk around as Indy, no problem. But then, okay, maybe like a priest costume will allow you to get into spaces where priests are allowed, but then like you're not going to be able to go into the middle of the fascist encampment,
Right.
And then like if you find the fascist costume, then like you'll be more able to more easily sneak into those encampments. But a lot of times, like, you can kind of maybe like brute force your way inside them, or there might be like like kind of roundabout ways to kind of sneak into them. But you're generally going to have a harder time if you don't have the right costume. So I never found
go ahead.
Yeah, I never found a fascist costume. You just told me again, like, how to get the Nazi costume in the area that I'm in. So that's going to make it a lot easier for me to clean up the remaining kind of side stories and quests that I have left to do in that area. That's...
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, that stuff is fun, but at the same time, like, these games are a little bit stupid, like the whole stealth thing. Like, okay, like the guy doesn't see me, but now, like, okay, like now I'm just close enough that he's starting to see me. I can just like take a couple of steps back, and he's not going to see me anymore again. And
it's even dumber in the area you haven't gotten to yet. It's really stupid in that one, because it's, in this case, it's like, okay, he doesn't see me because I'm in costume, but the love interest of this game is standing right the fuck there, and she sure as hell isn't in costume.
Oh yeah, no, I did have something like that. Yeah, she couldn't hide for shit, and yet she would never get spotted. She doesn't count. Like, it's like she doesn't exist. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, like
she actually can set the alarm off. She just almost never does it.
Oh, weird.
I've seen her do it before, and I'm like, God damn it, Gina!
But also, like, these enemies, I have the memories of goldfish, you know? It's like... At some point, you know, like, I had to fight I got spotted. I had to punch out a few Nazis, okay, and like run away. So I ran away. I managed to run away far enough and for long enough that they forgot my presence. Basically, they were like, okay, I guess this guy is gone. But then like I tried to sneak back in and they don't see me, but like they then see the bodies of their friends that they had triggered the alarm in the first place, and they're just like, oh no, like Johnny's down again. Like, or like, oh no, like there's someone around here. Like our friends are knocked out, and it's like, yeah, but you knew that. Like,
I once in, was it in Giza? You know, I think it was in Giza. I went up a guard tower with the sniper rifles, and I pushed the sniper off the tower, and he landed on another guard who was just doing his walking. And it took them out. And then a third guard who was there and saw it all happen just yelled, "Our guy's down!" And I'm like, no, I mean, yes, literally, you saw him fall from the sky. He is definitely down. At which point they started shooting at me up in the tower, and I just ducked down inside the guard post. They decided that there was no danger anymore, even though I hadn't come out of the guard post. Mm-hmm. And then they were just standing next to the body like nothing happened. Yeah. Like they never left his area, so he never re-triggered them. So I just walked back out, climbed back down the guard post in costume, just punched him in the face, and went back up the guard tower because I was waiting for somebody to come along so I could shoot him. There is some really goofy shit in these, and I think that's part of the appeal. Like MGS5 was extremely goofy because with the Fulton extraction system, where it was just like, I'm just gonna kidnap all the guards in the space. Fuck it, I don't care. Where it made things extra dumb. But like, even here, it works because Indiana Jones is a pretty campy series. So like, You just walk up behind a guard and there are these like takedowns you can do, these stealth takedowns. Some of them are just literally Indy walks up to the guard, taps him on the shoulder, they turn around and he just punches him in the face with like a scrub brush. It's like, okay. You didn't have to actually get his attention first. You could have just taken him out, but I guess, whatever, fine, Indy, sure. I set off an alarm in the Nazi camp in the area you haven't been to yet by throwing, what did I throw? I think I threw a can through the window of Voss's office and caused a commotion, and I'm like, oops, sorry everybody. My bad. But I was in uniform, so nobody, like, they didn't see me throw it. They just panicked because I think the can hit somebody. And then I just walked in there and people are running. I'm like, God, did you see that can? That was weird. All right, bye everybody. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Fine. It's great. They're so dumb. They're so dumb. And it's like, if the AI was smart, the game would be unbeatable. Like, that's the thing. Like, you don't want the AI to be smart in this game. You want them to be so stupid. I'm legitimately impressed you cleared Rome without the black shirt uniform. Because I'm thinking through, like, specific moments in the game when I'm like, how the fuck did he do that? I don't understand how he did that. That'd be really fucking hard.
Well, yeah, like you can kind of get by, you know, again, like it's just very silly, you know, you're just always like crouching, always like taking out one guy. Like it's funny how like two guards and a dog, like you can just like kidnap the rear guard and then kidnap the other guard and then, you know, hopefully scare away the dog. The dogs are annoying because you can't really do anything about them except if you can whip around them. Like they might get scared by the sound of the whip.
They don't like the sound of guns and whips, so they'll go run off. But you can't hurt the dog. They just cower in a corner and become effectively idle. It's very weird. But yeah, it's how all right, so you're in Cairo. I'm trying to think, or Giza. I'm trying to think what you've seen story-wise because I don't want to give you anything because this is fucking going places. The giant's the very beginning of the game. So you've met the giant.
Yeah.
You've traipsed through the Vatican in search of their secret giants, which is something that they tell you very early, so I'm not worried about that being a spoiler. Which is a completely insane phrase, even by Indiana Jones standards.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna just tell you now. It's not gonna get any more normal from here. We've gone full Leighton and then some in this plot. It's ridiculous. I do like that the fascists are just running archaeological sites all over the world. They're just digging everywhere. Everywhere they're digging. Yeah. Some cases it's the Italians, some cases it's the Germans, but everywhere they're digging. There are a couple stages that aren't. The Giza, Rome, and then the third stage Guillaume hasn't seen yet. They're big sandbox areas. They're really expansive. There's fast travel to get around them because otherwise it takes forever to walk across them. And they're kind of like divided up into zones where different activities can happen in those zones. And some zones require you be in a costume to be able to navigate them in a meaningful way. Some of them are non-hostile zones. Some of them is just kind of like the wilderness between them where you can fuck around. That is extremely MGS5. Because MGS5 has 2 areas, and inside those areas there are a bunch of camps. And there are roads that connect the camps, and you probably don't want to be on the roads if you can avoid it, because that's where bad things happen. But, the camp areas are effectively sealed containers that things happen in them until you leave them, and then they effectively stop happening. There are a couple areas in the game that are not built like that are much more like set piece action oriented, and I really enjoyed their presence because it broke the game up a little bit. I think when you leave Giza, you're gonna hit one, and it's like it's just a very like middle of the Indiana Jones movie action sequence where now he's walking on the wing of a biplane or some bullshit like that. It's very much a sequence of stuff like that, of just like high action drama scene for the 2/3 of the way through the picture kind of stuff. They really nailed the vibe of those movies. Like they really got it down in a way that's very funny to me. Because it means that somebody could have written a good Indiana Jones movie and instead we got the 2 we got. But I felt this way about, the Jedi games, the Star Wars Jedi games, Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, where it's like, this is kind of what I want from a Star Wars story. And I don't feel like I got those from any of the movies we got.
Yeah, and I'm getting like a cool, like, I'm being Indiana Jones vibe from pretty much all the scenes. Like, maybe I could want some more like set pieces where you are, I don't know, like setting fire to a Jeep and then sending it into an encampment or something. But I understand why it doesn't happen in the middle of like the big, sandboxy area where like maybe that would change things a little bit too much, like it would be, but then again, like, I don't know, like sometimes like, I wish like it were a little bit more spectacular, because at some point like, this woman is like, my sources have found maybe these long rumored tunnels underneath Giza, and like that's going to be how you enter this encampment that you haven't been able to get into. And I guess maybe I kind of wish that they had you, and like it's a thing that just happens in the story, right? It's all like cutscenes.
It actually jump cuts you to that.
Yeah, and I kind of wish, I guess, that you could set up maybe like making a whole thing explode or something. But then again, maybe it wouldn't make much sense because you're incognito. You're trying not to draw attention to yourself. So
there is in those action sequence later, there is one of those. But like they can't really change the layout of the. I guess they could. Like they could have had. Because I want to I go back to MGS5. I want to say that after the Sahelanthropus fight, the layout of one of those areas is changed. Like they could have done it. They just it would have made the game more complicated because it may have screwed with the progression of some quest lines or something.
Right.
Like maybe you need to go over there and find a thing. So like I get why it would have made the game more complicated. But
otherwise, like I've got the I think that probably like the combat's set to fairly easy, but the puzzles set to at least default. Like I don't get hints outside of like it often has me take pictures of the puzzle, and then like Indy will say something like the general, here's what I'm trying to do here. But they don't give you the solution, and I've been really enjoying those parts as well. Or even something as simple as like there are like these lock boxes all over the place that the Nazis have around, and like they leave codes, like you have to enter a combination to open them. And I had to figure out like this code on these the weather charts or whatever. Like and like I kind of did that kind of stuff. It's not quite indie level, but like it's good enough. And then like you've got the kind of the story in the main story, like you'll have these big like, okay, let's shine this light on these mirrors, which is very video gamey, but it's also very Indiana Jonesy. Like
that's where video games got it from.
yeah, like you put stuff weighted on pedestals, you know, to weigh them down to trigger something. It's like that's how those movies start, you know. So yeah, like it feels good to be doing that stuff.
One of my favorite puzzles in the game, Indy has the sandbag, and and you can adjust how much sand is in it to try to make it match, but it doesn't fucking matter because you don't know how much the thing weighs. Every outcome is the same. It's Indy has to run from the giant ball.
Yeah.
It's like they have this bespoke animation for him pouring sand out because that's what Indy does, but none of it matters.
Yeah, speaking of animations, like they lovingly animated Indiana Jones. Like there are so many expressions that I'm just like, yep, that's straight out of the movies. Like they really nailed it. Like I think some people talked about the uncanny valley aspect of some of the characters, and yeah, sure, but like the Harrison Ford model that they have is lovingly animated and is fairly convincing. There's like Voss, who I don't understand what happened there. I don't know. Like, I guess he's meant to look off-putting, but sometimes I kind of feel like they forgot to animate his face. Like, what he's doing doesn't make any fucking sense.
I think that's deliberate, but I'm not 100%. Like, he almost feels like he exists outside the game world sometimes when you encounter him. And maybe that's the goal. Maybe that's what they're trying to accomplish. But if that is the goal, they sure did it. Like, mission fucking accomplished.
Yeah, I feel like if they were going for like a kind of a Bond villain kind of weird fucked up thing there, like they should have explained that, you know, like, oh yeah, like this one bleeds tears, or cries blood, whatever. Yeah, you know, just taken in stride. But explain it. Like here, it doesn't. Like if they don't explain that, like his face was like is frozen like that because of, I don't know, whatever. Like it just looks weird.
I'd also say that Troy Baker does the voice acting for this. I would have never guessed it was Troy Baker if I didn't know that, because he did a really good job. And he doesn't sound exactly like Harrison Ford did at that time of his life, but Harrison Ford doesn't sound like Harrison Ford did either.
Sure.
But he's got the cadence right of that kind of like Indy always kind of sounded a little detached until he was mad or frustrated. And a little sarcastic, and God, does he nail it. But I mean, he's pretty close in terms of voice anyway. But like the angry, frustrated Indy, that sounds dead out of the movies.
Yeah.
When he's just yelling because the situation is too stupid for him to deal with. They did a really nice job with those scenes in particular. Or snakes. There are so many snakes in this game, and his reaction to snakes every time doesn't get better, it gets worse, and it's perfect. Like, it's just absolutely right. That's exactly how it should be when he encounters snakes. I mean, the voice acting in general is really good. The accent work is solid. This is, and I was talking about this with Seren. This is an expensive ass game. Like, you can see money spent everywhere on this product.
Yeah.
It's really well made. Like, we thought well made game, clearly made by professionals, applies here, but it goes in stride with also it's fun as hell to play.
Yeah. No, I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, so that's about all I have to say about it. I did play a whole lot of stuff during the holidays. So yeah, I'm just going to move on to some of the stuff. So, what's their name? Digital Eclipse. They've been on fire this past year, right? Like, they released so many compilations, and they're
3
just
or
so
4,
well
I think, yeah.
regarded, right? And they, even like some, other works that are not compilations, like, yeah, so they've got like the Worms, Armageddon anniversary thing. They've got Tetris. Sure. They've got, so many things. But then they also released Power Rangers Rita's Rewind.
Yes.
And guess who was looking for a beat-em-up game to play? This guy. And so the only Digital Eclipse game that I bought was not the really well-regarded documentaries that they've made, but is the Power Rangers game.
Nice.
Yeah, and there's not that much to say about it. Personally, I didn't grow up with Power Rangers. I think that I didn't have access to them for the longest time. I don't think that they got translated or whatever. I didn't have the channel to watch them. And once I did, I was not of the age where I would be interested in it. And also, I always, I enjoyed cartoons. I don't think I enjoyed, like, low, very cheap-looking video. Yeah. Anyway, so I was not into it. So a lot of this kind of goes over my head, like all the references that are in this game go over my head.
There are a shitload.
Yeah, but this game is very much like, I think, Digital Eclipse looking at the Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge, and thinking like, hey, we could make this, and then doing that with Power Rangers. Like it's basically the same. Oh, like the fucking title is almost the same,
Yeah, Rita's Rewind.
Yeah, and so it's their attempt at that, and I would say that it's pretty good, but I feel like they're not quite as good as the team that made Shredder's Revenge. The game is not quite as polished. There are issues where sometimes, like, your character should be behind an object or a building or something, and they appear like they're in front, kind of like hanging in space. Like, it doesn't happen very often, but like the game asks you to track down like these secrets and within each level, and so you're trying to explore every nook and cranny, and then when you do, you kind of end up pushing the boundaries of where you're meant to be, and so like the game doesn't always anticipate that, and so it looks a little bit unpolished at times. If you're not trying to explore every place, if you're just trying to beat the bad guys, it's pretty effective. It's not very deep. It's just like there are not that many enemy types, and you learn their tricks very quickly, so you know how to dispatch them pretty easily eventually. When you beat up, what do they call them? The putties?
Yes.
When you punch them, I don't know if it was like this in the show, but every time you hit them with your fists, they make a ball being smacked sound. A football. Not a football,
yeah.
a basketball.
Yeah, I mean, the Foley sounds in that show were very silly. So yeah, that's... I was in first grade when the show was at its peak, so like I can't put my so I was in the Target demo.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you I remember exactly the sounds of combat. I do remember the sounds that they always made, but the actual like sound of them hitting each other, but that seems like it would be in character for this show.
So yeah, it just sounds like you're smacking around basketballs, which is very satisfying. Actually, it's a good sound. I like it. The levels are what you expect. There's a lot of running around on rooftops and like in an amusement park, whatever. There are like clown putties, juggling. Some of the animation sometimes is pretty good. Most of the time, they're not that elaborate. Like the clowns, yeah, sure. Like you'll see them like juggling before they come to you and start trying to beat you up. But most of the putties are more simplistically animated. And like they try to make things a little bit more varied, add some variety by having segments where you're shooting at stuff. There are segments where you're inside your vehicles, and so like it's a view from like behind. It's kind of like a Mode 7 thing, and so like you're just like moving towards the base or whatever. At the end of the base, like you might have the big boss fight where like they turn huge, and then like you get into the Megazord. Yeah, like I don't know. Like some of the stuff works, some of the stuff doesn't. The as I said, like the regular enemies, like they're not very complicated to deal with. The bosses can be a real pain in the ass, and like sometimes it kind of feels just poorly balanced. Because the game will have special requirements like try to complete this not dying, or like within a certain time limit. But like some of the bosses are incredibly punishing early on, and then the later bosses will be a cakewalk. And so it kind of feels like they still need to balance this whole thing. And the Megazord battles are not very fun. Karen can't get the hang of them. And unfortunately, like it's something where you all have to, like how many players you're playing like co-op, you all have to do your part. And so like you have to run towards these big enemies, and like they're constantly shooting missiles at you, like on the left or the right or the middle. So you have to just like press left and right to dodge, like it's as if it's Punch Out, but at the same time you're trying to get close to them. And then like if you manage to get close to them without getting a rocket in the face, then like you mash the Y and B button to hit left and right, jab left and right. And eventually, like you do that. So once you manage to damage them enough, then it's like another ranger is like, okay, now it's my turn, and then like they have to do it. But what ended up happening during these segments where you can't really die, like you can just keep getting delayed, was that like I would manage, to beat them up, to take away one of the 4 life bars. It would be Karen's turn. She could not really get the hang of it. Would get really frustrated. She would lose her turn, and then it would be back to me, and then I would have to do that. Like I would have to do that 4 times, so we would go through that 8 times, really. Anyway, this is not a great description. All this to say that those boss fights are really dragged out and really annoying. Sorry, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I enjoy this game enough, but you can see that it's like, not quite up there in terms of like the brawler revivals that we've had in the past few years.
That's fair.
Yeah. Hopefully, like they're still patching it, so hopefully, like they'll still balance it. They'll still fix whatever doesn't quite work, and hopefully, like it will end up being like a really good game to get for once it's like half off. So we played some of that, and the other game that I've played a lot of during the holidays is this game that came out earlier this year, New Star GP, which is a low poly F1 racing game without the F1 license. So New Star GP, it's a cross, like it's not arcadey in the sense that like Cruisin' is arcadey, or even like Virtual Racing is arcadey. It's more in depth than that. You've got a long campaign. You've got like as you go through races, you're trying to get first place. You earn money that will help you maybe hire some different people for your pit crew, or upgrade your gear, basically. Kind of like in a super off-road kind of way, like, okay, I'm gonna improve the shocks, I'm gonna improve the brakes, the engine, whatever. And then like you keep going through the seasons, and it's just like this really, like, personally, I'm not super into F1 racing games because usually they're more they're more sims, and so I feel like, well, I couldn't even wrap my head around this, like I don't know how to precisely inflate the tires so that I have the best grip for this, without them wearing out too early, for this track. Like, don't ask me to do this. But this is much more arcadey than that. And yeah, like, you do have pit stops, but like it's very basic. Usually, like, the game offers you to have like a 2-stop or 1-stop run again around the track, or you can customize it, but I never do, because why would I do that to myself? And yeah, like I didn't expect this game to really wow me, because like F1 racing I find is not as fun as something like something more crazy, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like Daytona, or what's the
Excite.
I'm thinking of another rally. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's not it's not as crazy as like a rally game, because like there's not as much like changing elevation and stuff. But yeah, like, no, like it's a really fun game. It looks really good. It's set in actual cities. I get a kick out of I haven't traveled the world, but like I get a kick. There's Montreal's in here, and I can recognize it. I'm like, oh yeah, of course, like that's the river, that's the St. Lawrence River, and there's the bridge, and then like, yeah, I can tell that it's meant to be Montreal. And Brisbane also, like, I got a kick out of that, because I was there for like a couple of days on a layover that was supposed to be 1 hour long, and turned out to be like, yeah, we had to stay for 2 days after all. And I was like, yeah, I recognize that bridge, and like, that's totally Brisbane. That's awesome. The racing feels really good. It's just, at first I thought like most of the game didn't quite feel challenging enough to me, but like I now that I'm deeper into it, like it definitely it's definitely more demanding at this point, and it's a lot of fun. The game looks great. It's deliberately low poly, but it nails that look. Sometimes, like, it's kind of surprising what games have long load times and which ones don't. This one doesn't. It's got very short load times, so that's a pleasant surprise. It seems very well optimized for the Switch. And it's even got like that kind of F1 flavor to it in between races. Like where you finish a race and you'll have like a paper clip or whatever, like showing you a paper clipping showing you like the whatever drama is happening, or you'll have like special events like, oh, like a new star team has gotten a sponsorship from like this bagel place, and so now like every morning they have fresh bagels, and also they got $200 credit, and I'd be like, yes, awesome. And sometimes like like you'll have cut off someone on the track, and like they'll be griping against you, and so like a journalist will ask you like, well, so and so says that you're a poo-poo head, what do you respond? And you have the choice, like, well, yeah, it's totally my fault, my bad, or like so and so is an idiot, and like, who cares? And then that can make them more angry at you, and therefore more aggressive on the track in the future. So yeah, there's some, and your own pit crew, like sometimes it'll be like, hey, let's go mini golf, and like some other guy, like the PR person will be like, hey, let's go have lunch, and like you have to choose between the two of them. And so like whichever one you're gonna go with is gonna be happier, the other one's gonna get less happy, and each member of your crew gives you like special perks that you can equip. So, you have to manage that. Like, it's very simple again, but like it works. So it's like this excellent racing game. And I just played a ton of it. Like, I was kind of addicted, and I just couldn't let it go, and like every time that it was more quiet during the holidays and everyone was just like reading or like doing their own stuff or just, thumbing at their phones. Like I would play a few races and I had a great time. So yeah, highly recommended. New Star GP. It came out back in May, I think, and it's very good and it's regularly on sale. So I would highly recommend it.
Cool. Anything else?
Well, very quickly, the only board game that we played was Betrayal at House on the Hill, which I think is a pretty old game at this point. Like I talked about it on Blue Sky and a lot of people were like, oh yeah, I played this or, like the second version or whatever. We played the third edition. I will say it seemed very good, but it was also confusing as hell. And, the rule book was, pretty good, except for sometimes explaining very basic things where it just wouldn't tell you what that means. Like, oh yeah, like you can kill, you can combat, like if you have like a long range weapon, if you have line of sight, you can, shoot at the distance or whatever. It's like, okay, what do you mean line of sight? What does that consist of? Like that's not quite clear. Or like it never really told you. Like, it wasn't clear when you could initiate combat, like if someone was on your tile, like if it was their turn, like is it only them who can initiate combat and you can't? Like that kind of stuff we constantly had to look up. But the premise of the game was cool as hell. Because like you basically only have like the starting area, which is like the lobby of the house, and then you need to explore it. Like you choose like one of the basic stories. Like you can pick the like it's an inheritance, and you have to spend the night there to get it, and so you and your friends go there, and so you explore it. Or like, so one of your friends is missing, and they were last seen near that house, so you go explore it. Or like, like very like generic horror movie premises like that. And then like, so you start exploring it, and you are building the house as you go. You have to pick up cards that are basically tiles that you need to place down as you explore. You open a door, you pick a tile, you put that tile down so that the doors line up. And so like, okay, so this is a new room in the house. It's the kitchen or whatever. And then like the next person explores a little bit further, picks up another tile, and they grab the bathroom, I don't know. And so they put that down. And so you're building the board that you're going to explore as you're exploring. And sometimes like the cards will have an event on them called the haunt. No, not the haunt, an omen. And the more omens people pick up, and those like initially like they can give you some benefits as you grab them, like you can get not a superpower, but like a thing that you can do all of a sudden. The more omens you grab, the more you have to roll dice, and if you roll over a certain number with a dice, you trigger the haunt, and then basically that's when like the shit hits the fan. Like one of your group might become a traitor or a monster. It's not like a mafia kind of thing or werewolves kind of thing. Like everyone knows who the traitor is, but like all of a sudden one person is basically Bowser in Mario Party and is trying to fuck everyone over, and the others are trying to win the game. Overcome the villain or whatever. And so, like I became the villain. I was the traitor, and the haunt is like this kind of random occurrence where like you don't know what you're gonna get. Like it depends on the dice roll and stuff. And so what ended up happening is that like I had a special relationship with that house. Like it bended to my will, and so I was the one who had taken our friend there. I had kidnapped her, and I had gotten her lost in the house, and I basically I I got rid of her that way. And I hope that my friends would not find out, but they had to go investigate. I hope that they would warn our friend, but no, like they had to investigate the house, so I would have to kill them all. So from then on, like, my superpower was that I could move rooms around and I could, fuck with people that way. But then I could also cause them, like, psychic damage at a distance. But again, like, it was kind of confusing and couldn't really figure out, like, who's rolling the dice when I'm attacking. And, like, anyway, it was kind of there was a lot to learn. And so, like, some of the comments I saw online were like, oh yeah, like, I remember I've played that game a lot, and, like, I remember my first experience was very confusing, but, like, you kind of, eventually, like, you learn the game, and it gets very good. So I only had that one initial, play of it. It seemed promising, but I get the feeling that when we play it again next year, it's going to be a lot more fun. And
cool.
Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. All right. Well, we're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to do some listener mail, so stay tuned. We are back with listener mail, the first listener mail of 2025. You can send your emails to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That is rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Just like these people did. I will read the first email. It's a little bit long, so gentlemen, if at any point you're like, I think we get it, we can pop out. But Ravio from Low Rule writes, Happy holidays from Low Rule. Guys, my thrifty spending has decimated my funds. 2024 was a great year for my physical video game collection, but hell on my Giants wallet. I felt I had good enough sales in the shop that I earned to treat myself, but I went a little overboard. I purchased several consoles, games, and accessories from all game generations. Added a GameCube, Nintendo DS Lite, GBA SP, Fat PS2, PS3 Slim, a complete SNES Super Scope, PowerA, Switch controller, PlayStation Portal, Portal. Okay. For whatever reason, I thought he meant the Portal of Power, the card thing for the PS3. Too many games to list, and started CIB collecting. Jesus! Don't do that! I need to do better in 2025, especially to save up for the inevitable next Nintendo console. I am using this as an opportunity to not just do better with my finances, but also my mental and physical health. I am gamifying this by tracking all my expenses and setting a weekly allowance for myself based on if I eat well, go to the gym, go to bed on time, hit 10,000 steps, do chores, etc. At the end of each week, I tally the activities I completed and grade myself against the total chores. If I get 59% or less, no allowance. 60 to 69, $5. 70 to 79, 10. 80 to 89, 25. 90 to a 99, $50. 100% is $100. I'm hoping I can be disciplined enough to stick to it this year, but stick-to-itiveness is what keeps me going, and crippling debt. Have you ever gone to great lengths to control your compulsive gaming or your game spending habits? I am specifically and horrifically looking to John for answers, who is not here. Any input from the RFN would be appreciated. Here is to a productive and fulfilling new year, your friend and confidant. So I can answer it for John. The answer is no.
Yeah,
no, he has never done that. Never. And he never will. He will never improve. John Lindemann
it'd have to be the equivalent of somebody having like a whole like part of their playbook that is exquisitely well designed, and they never run it for reasons that we don't understand.
They always just run veer, even on offense, even on defense. It's just, sir, it's the wrong formation. What are you doing? John has one play and it's punt. So I have never really felt like my gaming spending was a major problem personally. And again, we've had conversations around spending in the past, and a big function of how you feel about your spending is, of course, how much money you have. If you don't make a lot of, if your expenses to get by consume a major percentage of your take home income, obviously your gaming spending, you're probably going to feel a little bit more, I don't know what the right word is, sheepish about what you spend on stuff. Whereas if you have a lot of disposable income, you might just be more inclined to make impulse buys and not really feel anything about it. It's that gray area of maybe you should be a little more concerned about it based on the factors going in and out, that gets you. And I do track my spending, not because I was spending myself out of house and home. Like I was still putting money away. But I was maybe not being as frugal as I could be, but usually it wasn't on gaming. Historically, I've spent a lot of money on gaming. Like my collection is, 500 games deep, I think, physical. God knows how many games are on my Switch. Like I legitimately couldn't tell you. But it was always kind of paced out, which if you only had Nintendo systems was easier to do than if you had something else. But the gamifying, it's kind of an interesting play. I don't know. What about you, gentlemen? Have you ever felt like you're blowing your gaming budget too hard?
I don't really have a budget for it per se, and probably one of my problems is that I save up too much. Which sometimes Karen is concerned. Like, shouldn't you try to have fun a little bit? And but yeah, like when there's a games, usually like when there are sales, I might buy more games than I'll be able to play. So I guess that's my major problem there. And yeah, like usually like the prices will be very low, but if I never get around to playing them, I haven't. Yeah, there was the point of buying it in the first place, right? So I feel like I don't have a budget for it. Maybe maybe I do need one, but like if I can remind myself that I don't have time to play these games, it becomes easier for me to just not pay attention to the sales in the first place at all, So like over the holidays, yeah, like I was thinking like, well, I still got Indiana Jones to play through. I got like this, I'm playing through like 3 different games at the same time. But like I'm going to be playing them for a while yet. So do I need to, buy like whatever recent-ish RPG that's on sale right now? Like I'm not going to get around to it quite yet. So why not wait? Like the gamifying thing, I don't think would work for me especially, but it sounds convoluted to me, right? Like I would just maybe like look up various kind of budgeting rules or whatever, like the 50-30-20 rule, like is a common one, like 50% of your after-tax income goes for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings. And so that's kind of a thing that keeps you on track, like to repay your debt is going to be part of the 20%. So like you repay your debts, you save up what you can. Ideally you want to, have like an amount for emergencies. Like you want to have like a sum that you're going to have in your account that you're not going to touch. And that's just going to be for when shit hits the fan. And then, have fun with your money, I guess.
You can't take it with you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's, someone, go ahead.
It's like, I'm under the 50%. Like, I'm very lucky. And I bought I have a decent living. I bought a house when the market was bad. So, like, I kind of got ahead of the game a little bit. So I'm not, I'm doing all right. But yeah, those kinds of things do help. I think the challenge here is, I like what he's doing because he's forcing himself to do multiple things that are going to be hard to do on their own. It's tough. Like, I went through a period of my life where and we've talked about on the show, where I lost a tremendous amount of weight. And it's hard. Like, it's hard to just do the shit you need to do to make that happen. Not because it's hard to do them individually. Like, going to the gym and working out for an hour whatever. I do that almost every day. It's not a big deal. Like, I can do it. It's getting up to do it every day. The individual action of doing it is quite simple. It's quite straightforward. It's not that bad. It's the this uses the word stick-to-itiveness. It's the making the habit. It's the like generating a habit thing and trying to combine these things that he wants to do into sort of kind of like a virtuous cycle of I do the things I want to do, or I don't get the things I want to. I do the things that I need to do but don't necessarily want to do in order to do the things I want to do. Does have appeal. Like, you should reward yourself for achieving certain objectives. My biggest concern here is that maybe it's too convoluted.
Yeah.
Because you have to keep it up. Like, you need to create habits that are simple. I know I have friends who don't have as much disposable income as I do. Maybe they've got kids, or they don't make as much money, or that one spouse is supporting another one, that kind of stuff. And they actually, because direct deposit's great, they segregate their money into separate accounts. Like, the one person I'm thinking of in particular has they know how much their mortgage is going to be. Energy bills obviously fluctuate depending on the time of year, but you can sort of anticipate that stuff. They know what their car payment is. So, like, that amount goes into one account. That account is used to pay off their bills. They then have a separate account that's savings. That's automatically taken out. That account is effectively not touchable.
Right.
And then they've got an account that is the other stuff. And in one case, I want to say he actually has an account that's just like, this is for me fun times. Like, this is the account for the family. That's where most of the stuff that's left over after bills and savings goes.
Does that qualify as a slush fund?
Yeah, essentially, it's a personal slush fund. But he doesn't go like, I'm going to use it all this month. Like, he puts money in there, and he doesn't have to get permission to spend it on anything. It's not like he and his wife talk about what they're going to do with it. It's like, this is my money. I earned it. I'm going to spend it on what I want to spend it on. And it's not a big chunk of his money. It's like, I don't know how much it ends up being. I know it's a couple $100 a month, I think, is what it ends up being. But, like, that's his money to do with what he wants to do, and what he does with it is really nobody else's fucking business.
I tried to do this exact thing. I had like a fun fund in my banking account, but I didn't stick with it because I wasn't. I don't know. I wasn't spending it. Like, I was like, well, if I save it enough, like, I can go on vacation or something. And then, like, it ended up being like too big of a goal. And I was just like, I'm just going to go on vacation when I go on vacation. And
I think he would, I think he would use the family budget for the vacation.
Right.
Like, this is usually for more minor things. Like, I want to buy a video game.
Yeah.
Would be a good example. In his case, it's probably more like, I won't get into his business, but I know at least some of it goes into his,
crippling waifu figurine addiction.
No, more like his fucking fantasy football addictions. But that's fine. I don't think he's not losing the house over it. So it's fine.
It's a game of skill, James. I don't know what your problem is.
It's a game of skill, and I'm not gonna assert that he's bad at it. I do believe Dak was his starting quarterback this year, so maybe not a great season.
Misfortune. But again,
maybe not a great season.
Reinforcing the fact that it is in fact not a game of skill that people can get injured.
But yeah, like that's much more automatic because it just comes out of his account. Like, I don't do that crazy. I have two accounts. I put 30% of it in one, and the rest goes into the other, and that. One pays the bills and the other is just stacking up. And occasionally I pull stuff out and shoot it off into like long-term retirement. But, like I love the thought process here though. Like, I love the idea of I'm going to try to create a virtuous cycle between the things I need to do and the things I want to do.
And the thing is, like, if this works, like, if you can stick with it for long enough that it becomes a habit, once you've formed a habit, you might not need this whole thing. anymore. Okay, like I'm in the habit of working out every morning, and I'm doing the thing, and then like you find out that, well, this eats up enough of my time that I don't even think about buying video games at this moment.
I play a lot less video games. The fact that I work out between 40 minutes and an hour 6 days a week, it turns out that eats up a lot of your free time.
Yeah.
But I do think this is not dissimilar to what you do with kids. Like, hey, you want to do these things. This is what you got to do to get them. Like, I do think this is a you kind of situation. Like, if that's what you need to stay motivated, then yeah, fucking do it. I would say make a chart. I have a chart for my workouts. It's a dry erase board. I draw it up. I bought black, it's used for engine marking tape. It's these really thin strips of black tape, and made a grid. And I just put the dates on there, and I mark the exercises on it that I'm doing that day. And I just write out my numbers. And like, if I miss a day, there's a big fucking blank space there to remind me that I'm a lazy slob. And that like fucks with my brain. But like having that visual, and actually I think that would make the process of playing this game easier. It's just a visual, just bang, here's everything on the board. Is also a way to sort of create the mental cycle. I have a family member with kids, and they had a calendar, and they got stickers they put on the calendar. That works until they're like 8, and then they're like, I don't want stickers. I want cash. But when they're younger, hey, the stickers were great. They just put them on the calendar. I did the things today. But yeah, like having something that's tracking yourself, tracking what you're doing, understanding the progress you're making, not getting necessarily caught up in the specific progress. I've got X amount of money on it. I've lost Y amount of weight. I can lift, Z amount of weight. But finding trend lines and rewarding outcomes is actually super valuable. Like my big reward for weight loss was a trip to Japan. Like that was the goal. Like I had to hit this number, and then I had to go. Like it was mandated that I had to do the trip at that point. Cause I almost backed out. I was almost like, it's a lot of work to go out there. And it's like, no. Like this is the cycle. You have to reward yourself with it. So there is value here in creating these reward cycles. And yeah, it will limit your budget you spend on it. But the problem, and Guillaume touched on it, something's going to come out, and you're not going to have $100 to spend, and you're going to buy it. Especially if you're getting into fucking complete in-box collecting. Don't do that. Just don't do that. That's not going to go well. Like, I don't know how much disposable income you have, but not enough for that. Nobody does. It's a bad path. It takes you to dark places where you're trying to find fucking stadium events, and you're importing a European copy because there's more of them. Like, I doubt it's NES CIB. That's sicko behavior. But like, CIB's hard. Like I have a shitload of DS games that are CIB, but I would never try to go after all of them. That's just because that's not just like you have Game Box instruction manual. That's like you have the fucking Nintendo Power card that came with these things that was branded for that specific game, which doesn't matter because Nintendo Power doesn't exist anymore. That's a dark path to go down. I'm just telling you now. Like, save yourself from that. I don't know, Greg, you had to import games a lot growing up.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, when I was a kid, we would, I was very lucky in that, our family had enough money that kind of extravagance was on the table at all, but it was still in such a way that it limited the amount of games. So that's really kind of, to me, that's what games were all through my childhood into kind of adolescence, was that it's an occasional kind of treat and you get every little bit out of it that you can. Right, like just play it to death as long as it's still fun on some level. It's not a case of like you're looking immediately for something else to play because it's not going to get there. But that combined with, I would just say again, as I mentioned before, declining kind of exuberance. It was like, it's never, even when you get to the point where it's like, okay, you've got your own money, you can spend it on video games. till you like it, that kind of conditioning, plus just like, I'm not the kind of person that's like, yes, I'll buy that game and I will definitely really enjoy it. Like, there's just this inherent pessimism of like,
oh yeah,
I might not enjoy it. I'm just not in the mood for that right now, and all that. I can always argue against something in my head for reasons like that. So it hasn't generally been a problem. I think one thing that we touched on a little bit in similar questions, but obviously with a different angle on them before, is just like, we obviously make fun of John with the whole, he's got all these games that he's never going to play and all that, and that again should not be taken for the idea that it's just, oh well, I would never do that, or I would never play a game that I don't end up playing, or because especially in the age of digital and how cheap some of the prices get now on digital, there's definitely things where I've thought it through beforehand. I've thought, what is the likelihood that I actually end up playing this? Not that high, but I'll still do it because it's just like, well, for this price, I'm willing to take that chance, and I attach a certain value to having the option to play it at some unspecified future date. So the only thing I would say about that, though, is it's still, like you still kind of refine the process a little bit over the years of like, okay, let's really try and like have you can't get too granular with it. Obviously it's not possible, but like have a really sort of decent evaluation at the very least of what the likelihood of actually using this particular bit of hardware or this particular accessory, or, just play a game. How likely is that? What circumstances is it actually going to happen? And what are the likelihood of those circumstances? And I'm sure I've mentioned this before. With things like like Analog Pocket or something like that. Where it's like, it's very tempting on a number of levels to have a more sort of, high-end, like really nice display for some of these GBA and Game Boy Color carts that I do have, even if it's not a particularly massive collection, because I kind of came to handheld gaming relatively late. But again, that's the point, isn't it? I don't have this expansive collection, and I think about the amount of times that, how long have I been playing Mario and Luigi Brothership, right? Like, it's, I'm not overflowing with the amount of time to like bounce from, or just the energy or inclination to bounce from game to game or thing to thing, or have a bunch of different use cases. Oh well, I would play this on the train, and I'll play this on the sofa, and I'll play the, it's kind of winnowed down a bit, and so it's easier at this point for me to say, well, you know what, it's nice, and theoretically you would like to have it for the occasional time they're like, you know what, I'm going to play Gunstar Superheroes again, or I'm going to play Astro Boy again, or on GBA, or, I'm going to play my copy of DK94, considering they won't put it on NSO yet, or stuff like that. But it just doesn't add up. The probability of actually putting that much time in, I can't put an exact number on it, but somewhere in your head it's like, nah, it's not there. It's not reaching that threshold where it's worth dropping whatever it is, £300 or something like that to get your hands on that Analog Pocket.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite add it. It's like you couldn't. And it's not that you wouldn't enjoy it if you did, but it's just not quite there. And just kind of, so that's probably the only thing I would say about all the stuff about having your own process. Again, it's something coaches talk about all the time, right? So trust the process, get addicted to the process, right? That's the whole thing. Like that. So if you get to that point where it's like, this is a process that works for you and it's a cycle and you can get that, addicted to it, go with that. But in terms of just some of those if you're gonna limit yourself in this way, then it's even more important that you actually have those kind of inner calculations as best you can formulate them. Again, it's never going to be very formal, it's never going to be very granular, but there's like, okay, if we're talking about stuff like, I mean, some of this stuff is almost incommensurable, right? Like, how do you weigh a PlayStation Portal against complete in-box games, Like,
right.
They're not really the same thing. One of them is almost what it's like, it's purely a collector's thing. It's an aesthetic thing. Maybe you could make money on it one day. It's a speculative thing versus
arbitrage.
Like, it's a thing that you can play your PS5 games in a slightly different use case. Like,
and that may be a use case that makes those games way more available to you. So you get more out of what you're spending.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's a potential utility there. And, you know, those two are very different things, but so it can be difficult to reconcile those things and say, okay, well, what in terms of in the end, everything has rivalry for your time and money, right? What wins out when you've got things that are really different? It's, you know, that can be quite difficult, but that's the point. You know, maybe with some of the other things it's a little bit easier, like in terms of, you know, GameCube, DS Lite, GBA SP, right? Some of those things. If it was me and I'm looking at if these were options that were presented to me, straight away I'd be thinking, well, the portable ones, I'm just far more likely to be able to get something out of, right? So they straight away kind of higher up in the pecking order. Doesn't mean, again, we've already talked about Analog Pocket, that it's a shoe in, that it's like, oh, well, just do it. Yeah, anything like that but, you know, those sorts of factors, if you consider, you know, by presumably doing some sort of, you know, taking stock of how you like to play games, how you're able to play games most frequently and most enjoyably, what things actually fit that mold the best, and then, you know, that's where you spend your money, what budget you end up kind of earning in this case for yourself. Then, you know, spend it on those things first. And then those other things that we attach a lower probability to, well, maybe you can get to them, maybe you don't, but it's just, you know, that's probably the best thing that you can do, is just have that kind of more, again, not easy, and a lot of it's kind of woolly, if you like, conceptually, but there's, as far as you can drill down into it, just to get that more well-developed sense of, like, yeah, what is actually gonna get, you know, gonna be worth spending the money on out of these things.
It's tough though. Like it really is like it's a constant reevaluation process. What's been working, what isn't. And I actually like the gamification here, but it's going to be tough to keep up. Because the situation will also change. Now, if you can bank the money, if it's not just like I have to spend $100 now, maybe that's not so bad. But to Guillaume's case, maybe you just end up banking a lot of money. I don't know. Again, we don't know your finances, and please don't send us your finances. Please don't do that.
I'll say too, you know, the behavior that he's describing, like, oh, I've been thrifty in my spending, and then like, thrifty means not spending, right? Anyway,
I assume
but
that's
then
facetious, yeah.
Oh, okay.
My thrifty spending has delivered me a complete SNES Super Scope for Power Race Widget.
Okay, maybe I misinterpreted then. Like, I thought, like, oh, all year I had been thrifty, and then I splurged, I binged. But yeah, like, binges happen when you deny yourself something, right? So,
oh yeah,
maybe allow yourself to regularly maybe open the valve a little bit, you know, like, have some frivolous spending every now and then, so that you don't end up like one day at a shop just like, okay, I'm getting a you know, a super SNES Super Scope and a PlayStation Portal to use it on, you know, only to realize too late that, like, oh yeah, that's not going to work.
Nice.
God damn, is Yoshi Safari not on PS5?
Not yet.
Oh, come on.
Any day.
Imagine what 8K could do for that game.
Oh my God, it'd be beautiful. Like, I do. And that doesn't just apply to spending on games. Like, also, when you talk about, like, eating well, don't fucking cut off the foods you like. Just understand how much of them you can have. I didn't change what I ate at all, effectively. Like, I may have eaten a little bit better, but, like, I still ate all the same shit. I just didn't eat as much of it. And I replaced that if I was still hungry, I replaced it with something that wasn't as bad for me. But oftentimes, just had to adjust how much I ate, and my body was fine with it. It was like, yeah, I'm actually not hungry. I felt hungry because my brain was used to it. But yeah, like, it's, you can't just cut things out that you care about because you'll be miserable. And to the point earlier, like, what good is life if you're miserable? If you're just not enjoying it, if you're not having fun, if you're not doing things you enjoy doing. It's just about making sure you're making good choices overall. And again, this also impacts things like, do you have kids? Do you have a spouse? Like that, like all these things have a dimension to them that kicks in. Now, we know that Rovio definitely does not, because Rovio is busy doing, I don't know, what was it, reselling you the same tools over and over again?
Well, technically, Rovio was lending them out, wasn't it?
Yeah, so really,
up until the point that you could buy them permanently eventually. It's been quite some time since I played A Link Between Worlds. I forget exactly how it went.
That was the mechanic I just chose not to engage with and just bought all the items, because like I don't care for this mechanic and I'm just going to buy them. I just feel better about it.
I guess it was one of these things. It's like, yeah, it was meant to suggest or offer to some degree a sort of flexibility that was a bit superfluous, as I recall.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, well, normally you play through a Zelda game and you gradually expand all the items you could get. Well, by kind of like renting them, you could kind of have them all at once, but you don't have them permanently. And, obviously, as we've said many times, like the specific dungeons only need one. They're always the hookshot dungeon or whatever, whatever particular item it might be. So it's like, I guess it's one of these cases of offering this kind of freedom that ultimately, this pays off much more so with Breath of the Wild, right? Where it's like, okay, well, we've got all this various kinds of non-linearity or multiple solutions to a problem. It was the beginning of that, but obviously much more, in a classic Zelda setting, because it's so based on A Link to the Past, where it didn't quite, like I say, it's more the illusion of that than the reality of it, I guess, that was kind of meant to be appealing to players, and just mixing it up, I guess, a bit as well. Otherwise it might have just been too damn close to A Link to the Past, right? It's got the same world and the same dual world component. So, I wouldn't say it didn't add anything to the game, but it probably, it's one of those things that probably sounded more interesting in preview coverage than it actually was in the game. You know what I mean?
Agreed. Anything else? All right, let's move on to the next email. We have 2 emails. I don't know if we're going to get to both of them about the successor to the Switch system, but because it is, we are now in the quarter where it will be announced. We do not know when, beyond just in this quarter, financial quarter, which runs through March. We probably need to get to these sooner rather than later. So, Guillaume, would you read the Freestar email?
So Freestar writes, "Dear Cozy Space Radio Free Nintendo Puzzle Sandbox. A new Nintendo console on the horizon means a new digital storefront. As expertly reported by this podcast, the Switch eShop is currently drowning in AI garbage. What methods should Nintendo use to help combat this problem on a new eShop? And what do you think Nintendo will actually do? Will the Switch successor's eShop be a clean, bespoke experience? Or will little Bimmy turn on his Switch successor on launch day, access the eShop, and be swarmed by a tidal wave of almost pornographic AI art using asset flips with nonsense names? Thanks for all the weirdness you deliver every week."
I imagine the nonsense names would be particularly injurious to Bimmy.
Oh, definitely, yes. I like the deliberate mixing of metaphors here. Swarmed by a tidal wave.
It's true.
That is something that AI would do, yes.
You say it's a mixing of metaphors, but it's also just Raymond Bryce's life, isn't it?
I suppose this is an email targeted towards me, and I have complex thoughts here. So if you guys want to go before I just start unloading information about,
look, it's not obviously. I consult the eShop, periodically, of course. So I'm aware of the situation. I don't think I'm as steeped in it as you are, James, or probably other people. I'm certainly no position to talk about exactly the steps they can take to kind of try and control this problem for the future when the next system comes along. I just would have thought, I guess some of this stuff is probably, you've got to think about how it will play out over years and so many different publishers and, parts of the world, everything, right? So with this kind of, it's just as a general matter of like crafting policy here, you need something that's going to be you need something that's going to make a difference, right? It's that is actually going to cut into the problem of just be getting spammed with stuff that has essentially no
Stuff
value.
is the right word.
Right? You need policies that will do that will cut into them, but they've got to be simple enough that you can implement them, right? That it isn't actually going to be something that won't work at scale, or it won't work over time, or you've got to. There's a kind of there's a compromise somewhere between, this is not going to eradicate the problem that you are trying to combat, but it will make a difference, and it's something you can actually manage and implement without going too far on costs or too far on burdening actual developers and publishers that you want to be your partners on a new system and all that stuff.
And it needs to be policies that can be enforced in a way that no one can accuse you of being arbitrary and capricious
some sort of favoritism or any of that. It needs to be transparent and just like, look, this is the policy. You all understand it. You see it in action. End the story.
And the problem is when you write a policy like that, and I don't want to give my answer too far, but I will expand on this. When you write a policy like that, the very first thing the bad actors are going to do is find holes in your policy. And that's where we're at right now. We're in we found holes in the Switch policies phase of the game. And the holes are now well known, and people just driving Mack trucks through them on a regular basis. Guillaume, I don't know, what's your thoughts on the state of affairs and where they're going to end up?
So there used to be a time when I would pay attention to everything that got released every week, and I would actually know what came out, and I would have a decent idea of what the games were about, and not just that was easier back in the day when there weren't on average 54 releases a week. So that is a problem, but also the situation is such that now I don't pay any attention to what comes out any given week. So I do think that, there's something that needs fixing here, but do I have the solution? Not really. I guess I would say personally, maybe bring back Nintendo Week, hire a couple of actors to just make fun sketches to amuse me every week and tell me about, some of the week's highlights. I would be down for that, maybe, but then again, maybe not. I'm a different person than I was 12 years ago or whenever that was. It's over. Yeah. Anyway. I don't know what the solution is. But certainly, right. They need to update. They need to have a shop on the system that is more responsive than what we have right now. Because I'm never going on the Switch to make any purchases. I always go on the website. No. I always go online because it's unthinkable trying to do anything. Yeah, no, it's bad. So they certainly the very basic thing that they can do is make a working eShop on their system.
Yeah, and that literally comes down to, I want to say it's just holding all the things you've seen already in memory, because it's not doing pagination, it's doing paginated scrolling. So everything that you pulled before is still there. You can just scroll up and see it without it reloading. So it's just, eventually there's just so much shit in memory, the Switch just goes, I can't handle this fucking shit, and just bombs out. Which is you can fix that. That's a how you manage your data thing. Because look, it's not shocking that Nintendo may not have engineered the Switch with the expectations of 50 plus games a week. That's one, the market really wasn't there except on Steam, but two, Nintendo sure as fuck wasn't that popular, coming out of the Wii U. So like, I can totally see how that would be an oversight. I expect that mechanical stuff to be resolved in whatever the bespoke eShop application is written for the Switch's successor. We know the Switch will be backwards compatible. The Switch software is forwards compatible with the successor system. So, and how they worded it, like, it seems like most of the software on the eShop presently will be available to purchase and download on the successor system. It may be there's a handful that are gone because licensing agreements expired or whatever. But, they'll still be there. Are they going to be front and center on that shop? That's an interesting question we can get to. Are y'all okay if I just start talking? Because I have a lot of things. I'm going to take silence as acceptance. All right. So let me start with a little bit here with what we've got. So Nintendo relaxed their policies on publishing games. Really, they did it around the Wii U era. They did it when they started talking about like making HTML5 games available on the Wii U eShop. The results of that were mixed bag. We talk about it. It's probably worse than a mixed bag. It's probably mostly games that you and I would not be interested in playing. Maybe a handful of games that were really cool came out of that, but primarily it wasn't quite Xbox Live indie games level of like, we're going to open the floodgates in this segregated space and whatever happens, but parallels existed. Because people who grew up playing video games wanted to say, I have a game available on a Nintendo system. That's fucking rad. Because guess what? That's fucking rad. And yeah, that means you're going to attract the full spectrum of people making games, from people buying essentially fully completed Unity asset demos and then doing whatever work is necessary in the tutorial to get them up and running, putting a title screen on them and calling it a day. Which is valid in a way. Like, I say valid. Let me be clear. They have every legal right to do that. When I say valid, like that's they're not stealing that game. Like, that game is built to be a shell to either teach you to make Unity games or to be like the shell you build your own product around. I could see somebody who's creative, but maybe doesn't necessarily have the technical skill to build a game from scratch, buying one of those things and just fucking with it in a way to make it a bespoke experience using or reusing these kinds of pre-built assets, pre-built engines, pre-built components. That doesn't tend to happen because that takes creativity. But it is something that could happen. So, for Nintendo to create hard and fast rules that go after certain things, whatever your thing that bothers you is tough. The one I hear a lot is like, well, they should just ban AI generated content. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you are in the range of my voice, one, you don't want that rule. Why? Because we don't know what AI generated content means. That's going to have different definitions for everybody. That rule is unenforceable. But two, as that stuff gets better, it's going to be harder to tell. And you're going to end up with situations of like, that's got AI generated content. Prove it. Fucking prove it. But also, that's the direction that the industry is going. And not necessarily like, we're just going to go sample off the internet and do generation off of it. AI is a broad spectrum of things, and understanding how it can be used and how it can be used by creatives to do things more quickly, more efficiently, more usefully than they've been doing them in the past is going to be a thing that we have to deal with. Yeah, there needs to be some guardrails, but Nintendo's not going to create those guardrails in the fucking eShop. That's not their job. Like, that's not really their role, and it's going to be impossible for them to enforce it because then they'd have to go back and be like, I think this is generated by a generative AI. Prove to me it's not. Like, that's not work they're going to want to take on themselves because that's a tremendous amount of work for the volume of games coming in. I posted an image in the chat. This game caught my eye earlier this week. So unlike these guys who don't go look at everything that comes out on the eShop, I actually, because of the crap, do it more. I have a bookmark that just, because Nintendo actually tries to hide the ability to say, I want to see the most recent things released on the eShop. Don't give me your featured bullshit. Show me everything. Show me the full fire hose. Nintendo like actively tries to make that hard to do. I have the URL saved in my browser so I can just go see it every day or so. I found one called World of Movies: Puzzle Game Challenge to talk about nonsensical games. For what that is, it's images from, well, here's what I thought it was because I've learned to read eShop title, which is its own language. I thought what I was about to pull up was screenshots from movies turned into jigsaw puzzles. And I was like, that's really going to be pushing the limits of fair use. In theory, you could legally do that in the United States. I do not know and do not claim to know the fair use policies of products outside of the US. There are rules around like non-commercial versus commercial products, but you can have fair use in commercial products as long as you're not overusing the source material. And so a single frame from a 93-minute movie that was what were movie 33 frames per second roughly, like
24.
Who gives 24? Yeah, like who gives a fuck? That's definitely not over the majority of the work. Now, where you could get is to trademark shit, like you making it seem like you're implying we're supporting this. This game wasn't that. It was something much funnier. They described it as inspired by, actually, I'm going to read it. I'm going to read the text. Delve into the magic of cinema with 60 mesmerizing puzzles inspired by iconic films that have marked generations. Each of these digital puzzles will transport you to unforgettable scenes. And here's the valuable subclause: recreated with dazzling graphics and a level of detail that will immerse you completely in the world of cinema. These are AI generated images based on prompts from movies. So the one I put in there is obviously Ghostbusters. It's the Marshmallow Man, but it's clearly not the Marshmallow Man. It's just like it kind of looks a little bit like Oogie Boogie from A Nightmare Before Christmas, but white, wearing the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man's bandana. But also he's not very tall. He's just standing next to people wearing generic Ghostbuster looking outfits, roughly the same height. It's terrible. It's fucking terrible. It's atrocious. But also it's hilarious. Like, it's amazing. The Indiana Jones one, it's obviously it's the boulder scene, but it's obviously not Indiana Jones. It's just a generic looking guy. Again, because these are just AI generated prompts. They probably said like, recreate the boulder scene from Indiana Jones. Like it may have been that simple, but like Nintendo's not going to go police these things. One, you have to think about the scale they're dealing with. You say it's 50 games a week or whatever. There have been weeks where it's like 170. The amount of people you would need to go through whatever policy you implement is going to be cost prohibitive. Nintendo's not going to make a lot of money on World of Movies: Puzzle Game Challenge. They just aren't. It's selling for $2.99. It's not going to sell that many units. So how much time does Nintendo want to put into a review? And what policies could you implement that don't feel arbitrary and capricious? If you said like, well, no AI generated content, you're going to piss off some of your key publishers. It's like some of your most core partners. So how do you write that policy in a way that it's not, again, to use the phrase, arbitrary and capricious, but also that it's enforceable, that it's recognizable, that it's a very clear rubric of, is this violating the policy or no? You could do something like, hey, if you use AI generated content, generative AI content in your game, you have to check a checkbox on the form that publishers fill out a form when they post a game to the Nintendo services. And maybe Nintendo calls that out somewhere. But again, it's the honor system. Like, you're not going to catch somebody in the act. There's too much shit going on. But yeah, like that, he talks about the hentai stuff. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about hentai on Radio Free Nintendo. So, we haven't done that in a while. Let's do it. Despite everything I said about it, Konosuba is not porn. It would just make it worse. It'd just make it so much worse. The problem with them, And this comes to the nonsensical names as well. I can explain all of this. I can explain all of this in one shot. It's SEO. They are putting Nintendo's search algorithm is written in such a way that largely it's just surfacing on terms, biasing terms that are in the title of the game. And that makes sense. People know the name of a game roughly, they put it into the search, they get the game that the name they actually were looking for. You don't want to over index on that. So it's it's gotta be exact. Because parents might not know the name of the game, a kid might know the name of the game roughly. And so what you've got is people putting terms into the name of their game designed expressly to get them in the search results. Terms that people are searching for. That's why every game seems to fucking end with the word simulator. Because simulator is a thing people are searching for. So you end up with parking and driving simulator. House painting simulator. Float survival simulator dream survivor. Is the word ocean survivor, Float survival simulator ocean survivor. Why are all these words in there? Well, because people search for survival, they search for survivor, they search for simulator. Ocean Survivor, I think, was the name of a different game. And so these words end up in these titles that don't fucking mean anything. Santa showed up in there. Cop office. This is one of my favorite ones from the last few weeks. I think this came out on the 20th. Cop officers, police simulator of New York City, of NYPD City. What? So that is cop officers. So police is already being said once. Police simulator. That's our second reference of police. Of NYPD, the New York Police Department city. So apparently it's a city just for the NYPD. So cops are mentioned 3 times because they think people are searching for that. Fighter Aces, Sky Dominance. The dominance probably isn't the word people are searching for.
To be fair, I think Copland would have been way more popular, the film with Ray Liotta and Sylvester Stallone and all that, if it had been called this instead.
Mm-hmm.
I would have gone to see that movie. There's a bunch of them that have Santa in them around the holidays, even if Santa's tangentially, marginally, not at all related, or Christmas or whatever. There was one that was came out, was called Christmas Games Collection Simulator. I don't know. Again, we had to put the word simulator on there for no fucking reason. And they were just games that were already on the eShop. None of them were Christmas related, but it was a collection for Christmas, not a collection of Christmas. That was their explanation, actually. There are, and alright, let's do this. This is actually really funny to me. 1, 2, 3, I stopped at a random spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in a row that have some conjugation of the word simulate in their title. And it's all about that, these are things people are searching for. Fight Simulator 2025, Aereo, Taxi Driver Simulator 2025, Skydiving, Parachute Flight Simulator. But then you get your porn. What's a good one? I say good. Real Hentai 4. This is very funny to me because there's no hentai in this game. It's rated T for teen. Sexual themes. Partial nudity, which is not nudity. Partial nudity is a funny phrase because it means not nudity. So it's not hentai. It's not hentai at all. So why is it called that? Well, because they wanted to get there when people search for the word hentai. Which apparently people do because there's a shitload of games with the word hentai in it. And it's not just me searching for it to find out how many there are today. There were 2 that came out. I think these were also on the 20th. These came out back to back. Love Furry Boys, Zodiac Dating App, and Love Furry Girls, Zodiac Dating App. One, I appreciate they equal opportunity for this. But these are just the words. These are the words that went in there. Same publisher, same day. Anime Girls Dating, The Night Before Christmas and the Tree. And Anime Boys Dating, Night Before Christmas and the Tree. I don't want to know what tree they're talking about. But again, these were just words that got thrown in, and yeah, they probably did use AI-generated images. Not all of them. Actually, there was one of the games I was, One of the games, the one I mentioned earlier, Real Hentai 4, absolutely using AI generated. But there was another one, I can't remember what it was called. I was looking at earlier researching this email where I'm like, oh, these are hand-drawn. Okay. Good job. But they're just puzzles. They're just jigsaw puzzles. Why? Because it's low effort stuff. Now, if you were to say like, hey, you can't publish more than N number of games in a week, which I know goes back to almost Yamauchi territory, but he was in a year. Maybe you'll crimp down on this a little bit, but like, nah. Seren had one that I didn't entirely understand, but I do now. One change that she would make, so I'm just going to steal this. She posted it in the Discord, so it's not like it was private or anything. Where a game can only be in 3 bundles. What do I mean by bundles? So bundles are like bundled with its DLC, bundled with another game, that kind of stuff. Why? Well, because there are publishers who made a game or a product for the eShop and then just keep republishing it in new bundles, new permutations of its DLC. Why do they do that? Because that new bundle gets listed on the top of the screen. I actually wrote an article about this back in 2023, where I believe it was called like 4 Pictures Made Me Insane or something like that. Where one of these games had like 9 versions at this point. That game has since had like 9 more versions since then. Why? It's just DLC permutations. That piano game I talked about on the show where I'm like, it's fucking terrible and you can't even play a whole goddamn scale. The reason it's so bad is 1, the company sucks. But 2, the free DLC, the DLC for that game is free, was remixed and rebundled expressly to create new SKUs for that game so it could be back at the top of the most recent release list. Now, why is that stupid? Remember when I told you at the start of the conversation that it's really hard to just get to see the most recently released games? It's still true. So people are doing this for the limited benefit you get of the thing that's almost impossible to do anyway. Like, it's not that creating a bunch of policies will fix the problem. I mean, it might help. The problem is that the publishers who are here, the article was called, I saw 3 images and I'm enraged. In my very understated writing style. The issue is largely something that publishers themselves just need to have, like, taken out on them. Like they need to understand on their own that this doesn't work. And I think there's probably some things Nintendo could do from a policy standpoint that might help. But I think a more mechanically functional eShop where recommendations are a thing, where people can say like, this game is good, this game is bad, and games that are good get driven more organically towards top of search results. But then you run the risk of new games having discoverability problems. So like maybe you could have Nintendo do some curation, because Nintendo does touch every game that comes through the eShop. Like they make sure it's not going to fuck your system up. They might say like, oh, there's some quality here. I'll take a closer look at it. But then you're paying somebody to be an aggregator. And with, like I said, 50 games a week, 100 games a week, 200 games a week. Like I've seen numbers like that before. It's not reasonable. It's not realistic. Like, I guess they're doing some of this with lot checks, so they must already be doing some of it, but it's a lot. And then again, how do you prove you're not being arbitrary and just like working with people you like? It's very easy to say Nintendo should just keep this crap out of the eShop, but it's how do you write policies that do that aren't just bypassed by new fucked up behavior, new weird shit, new person releasing another goddamned Nori game on there. I can't believe these things. They're releasing visual novels with no visuals that are only in Japanese on the eShop internationally. Why? Because it's easy. Inquiry for Justice is a real thing. You can go search for it right now. It's not there. You can't do anything about it. There's no saving you. You can't be saved from this. It just is what it is. I ran into a bundle recently. Oh, I'm quoting the article, called Cooking Tycoon 3-in-1 bundle. And it was sold out. I don't know how you sell out a digital product. I will never know how you sell out a digital product, but they did. Like, the problem isn't Nintendo expressly. The bad search is a problem. If the search didn't just like, whatever, we're just gonna lexicographically search through the titles and go from there. If it applied some kind of additional rubrics to keep low quality content down, but in a way that is not capricious, in a way that is effective, in a way that surfaces the content people actually want to see, or that people don't know they want to see that they need to see, which is hard. That's really difficult. This problem largely goes away because you can't just get on the list by searching simulator.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing you mentioned, obviously, the actual kind of the thing that solves it at source is, if it just proves, is a market response, right? That it does not work. So there's no money in it. It won't happen. But, how kind of, how much you can hope for that is somewhat debatable, especially because if you're Nintendo, you're very much hoping that you're going to sell enough units of hardware of the successor system that this problem is possible in the first place. And I guess that's the point, is that there should be some amount of time, really, because that's what these tactics are predicated on principally, right? It's just that you only need a vanishingly small percentage of a massive user base to kind of fall for this stuff for it to work, right? But in the first phases of the new system, when it's, it could be selling at a very high pace, but it's still not in an absolute sense going to have a huge number of users. And I would assume, therefore, that it will be much less desirable or viable for these sorts of scams, essentially, right? Because it's just even if you were having a relatively high, almost completely infeasible percentage of people actually falling for any of this stuff, it still doesn't add up to enough to kind of make it worthwhile, in the early going. So I guess it's important how they lay things out at the beginning in terms of, being transparent, being fair, having something that's workable, that as a blanket, a global policy. But there may be a certain amount of time before you really get this sort of stuff in earnest again. I don't know how long that will be, because obviously, again, this AI stuff is like a moving target. It just presumably just makes it easier and easier to run this sort of scams, with each passing day. But I would assume it won't be as bad at the beginning, and so maybe you've got a little bit of time to kind of fine tune the measures that you do put in place at the beginning.
Yeah, I suspect what's going to happen is people are going to continue to release these games on Switch because there's nothing like a lot of these ones that are just AI generated image. These fucking BIM fleas through time that keep come out every fucking week and look like absolute dog shit. I would love to speak to the person making this, and by speak I mean slap. But they're just junk. They're junk. Yeah, I mean I get it. They're detritus. But the problem is the barrier to making them is so small. It is so tiny that they have an engine that they may or may not have built. They may have just bought it. They AI generate the images for each scene, and they write some fucking shit ass story and call it a day, and they're done. They're they're mission accomplished. Publish the game, and they just do this week in and week out, and they can because again, like you said, the barrier for this stuff is very low. It's Outdoor Games is the company in question. They did a whole bunch of fucking Santa ones over the holiday. So Bimflea and his time travels got a break because they had to do their fucking Santa bullshit. But they must have some return because they keep doing it. I want to give you, I'm just going to read you what Aldora published since a month ago. January 6th, Bimflea and his travels in time, Greece. And it's just the same fucking CG characters. They're in togas this time. Santa Claus and Christmas, Happy Adventures. AI generated Santa backgrounds. It's just a fucking visual novel with a bunch of they're almost all drawn in the style of Tangled / Frozen. Because that's what That's what Mind Journey is set to output. I think it's all Mind Journey. That was on so why are they not in date order? Nintendo, why the fuck's your system fucked up like this? Bimfley and His Time Travels, Greece was 12.6. Santa Claus and Christmas, Happy Adventures was 12.5. I don't know why it's sorted the way it's sorted. Bimfley and His Time Travels in Egypt, 12.20. Bimfley and His Time Travels in Japan, 12.13. The Kingdom of Christmas, I didn't know Santa was a fucking king, Santa's Elves, 12.12. Christmas Stories, The Adventures, lowercase a, of Santa Claus, 12.19. None of these Santas look the same.
Maybe Santa is merely the steward of Christmas.
Oh, okay.
One day the King of Christmas will return, we promised.
There we go. I saw a Christmas movie from the Soviet Union where they couldn't be Christmas because they were anti-religious, and they called it Father Freeze or whatever. And it was just Santa with ice. It was fucked. Hey, guess what? Soviet children's content is bad. All of it. Love and High School, a visual novel romance, 12.23. The Little Gnomes, The Secret of the Magical Forest, 12.24. The Little Animals, The Wild Race, 12.19. Nintendo, why aren't these sorted by date? What the fuck? Because they're sorted by featured. None of these should be featured. Did I miss any? No, I didn't. And that's just December. November 29th, November 28th, November 22nd, November 21st. Like, these fuckers just can't be stopped because the level of difficulty of producing this stuff is so low. They made one in October called Princess Rapunzel, Kingdom Legacy, and it's just fucking tangled with a blowout. Like, it's just the tangled main character with the blowout. The bar is so low that, yeah, this shit's gonna happen. I'm gonna guess they're gonna keep making Switch games. And I'm gonna guess Nintendo, aware of the fact that the Switch game store is a fucking nightmare, is gonna not put those front and center on the Switch 2 shop. Now,
that's got to be, again, because it's all about, they know it's going to be a tiny percentage, but when it's,
right,
you've got enough users, that can work. And Switch presumably is going to have that advantage for some considerable time, in that regard. Now, and especially if you've got some, not necessarily big, really restrictive, sweeping kind of rule, but if you've got some rules, some frictions as well on top, it might be, sort of possible to kind of dissuade for a while. But you've got to think eventually there's a tip, especially if if the platform is meeting its goals of selling sufficiently and people, and even before it reaches the point of like just absolute user base, you're talking about, just the number of people actually spending money on it might kind of tip in that direction. Because it just might be the case of, there's loads of people own Switches, but how many of them are actually visiting the eShop anymore? That kind of stuff. But eventually, you're going to have to reckon with it again. Like, I would have thought they could do, and no particular reason to think this would be the case, but they could do everything right, as it were, and it would still, you're still going to have some version of this problem X number of months or years in, and I mean, hopefully there's just better mitigation strategies, because that's really, I can only imagine that's what you're talking about, is mitigation rather than elimination.
Right. It's discovery. It's finding ways to manage discovery. And YouTube has the same problem. Like, about 3 years ago, there was a big cycle on, like, YouTube's algorithm seems to fuck up real fast. You start with a completely clean slate, and it's recommending fucked up shit to you in, like, 5 or 6 videos. TikTok is brain rot. It just is. It's brain rot. It's a cancer. It is a cancer upon society. But its algorithm is designed to serve you garbage. It is a garbage delivery mechanism. The problem with the eShop is that there is no algorithm. Like, there is like games recommended for you. like, which is the thing Nintendo puts on there. But I can't figure out any cadence to how it works. I can't figure out how it functions. And like, I see this on some streaming services that I have, where it's like, they recommend me 4 or 5 shows that I've already watched because we think you'll like this. I'm like, yeah, fuckface, I watched 5 seasons of it. I love it. Congratulations.
I've noticed that on some things too, and then generally had stuff for like super long. So I don't know whether that's the problem. Like, you know, if you only ever have stuff for like a few months at a time, it just doesn't have like a big history to draw upon. But still, it's like, but in another sense, it makes it even worse. It's like, I literally watched that like a few weeks ago, and you've forgotten it. Like,
or you're using it to suggest another show I've also already watched.
See, that seems like the most library. That should be the most simple thing of all, is to not recommend things you've already watched. They don't need some sort of exquisitely constructed algorithm to eliminate those. I mean, it's just a watch history thing. Yes. I mean, I don't imagine there's terribly many people out there that are that jazzed about the thought of, algorithmically derived futures that seem to await. But when you put it in those context, it's like, God, it really is going to be rubbish.
But like, that's the thing. If Nintendo had an algorithmically derived structure that could, while not over biasing on a success of a game, because that hurts discovery of new games, but also not over biasing on new games getting a boost, because of course they don't have the success background established yet. And yeah, you can do that through the algorithm. You can say we're exposing this game to a limited population of people just to see who takes on it. Okay, as we've seen the audience start to take on that game, we can then determine similar players and serve that game up to them. And then you can start ramping up how much people see the game. And then as the game starts to wane, you can start to ramp it back down. You can time box these things for like, a purchase, or even just a navigation to the page to look at it in more detail, scores this game X number of recommendation points for the algorithm, and those points degrade over time. There's a general burn down to how long that interaction has value, so that, new things get some extra lift, but shit like Mario Kart's always going to be near the top. There's ways to handle this that you can have all the fucking detritus in the eShop, and you'll see some of it, because you're going to be in the sample group for that particular game to say like, hey, we don't know what this game is yet. Like, we know what the publisher told us about the game, but that's fucking valueless. I read you in the game. There is a game legitimately called like Police Chase Parking and Driving Simulator 2023. And it's like, what the fuck is that game? What is it about? Police? Is it about parking? Is it about driving? Is it about the year 2023? That would actually be really funny. But we just don't know. We don't know what those games are. So we just kind of sit there and go like, okay, well, serve it up on the algorithm to some people, see who bites, look at their history and try to create a profile of people who would be interested in that game, and then start serving up to people who fit that profile more heavily, and start, managing it. Those games still happen, but unless you do what I do and actively go look for them, you're not going to encounter them. Or at least not encounter them at volume. You'll see them occasionally, and they'll go through your vision, and you're going to go like, well, that's dumb. There's no hentai in that hentai game. But then you move on. You forget about it. The problem with the eShop is there is a recommended, but it just recommended Nintendo shit. There is a see everything that just came out on the console itself, but then you get the full flood. And then there is what I have to do on the browser page, which is like generate that same list so I don't crash my browser or crash the Switch trying to go through it. But then you see the junk. You see all the junk. But like, again, I'm doing it because I want to see the junk. I want to understand what I'm looking at. I want to see the current state of affairs for the Switch. And it's not great. But at the same time, I wouldn't want stuff like, it's a good example. Voice of Love on Air, which I have no interest in. It's a boys love visual novel. Just absolutely nothing for me in it. But that game's going to have a very limited audience. It's not going to be a big mover. So it's probably not going to get surfaced if you base it entirely on interaction. But I doubt Nintendo's got a checkbox in their, like, developer portal for, like, keyword. Boys love. And the problem is, like, if you give them that, you're still going to have the bad actors who just say, I want all the keywords. My game has everything. I have built truly the super game. I have beaten Sega to the punch. My game has everything in it. It has all the features. It has all the tags. It has all the content. It is the game. It is the game from which all things come and all things flow. It is no, it's not going to be any of that shit. It's going to be an asset flip. But I can't control what the people who publish the Traffic Master Collection do. I don't have the power to stop Multi-Level Parking Driver's publisher from marking that game as being a simulator. I can't do it. I can't review all the content. So I know we talk about the danger of the algorithm, but this is really a situation where the algorithm might make this, I don't want to say more equitable, make it more practicable for the audience, make it more digestible. Yes, there are going to be losers from that change, but those losers are probably people that we aren't going to feel bad for. But they're like, if you do it wrong, there will be losers who don't deserve to be losers out of this, who are making bespoke products that just have a limited appeal. And I say limited, not as in like the appeal is bad, but like the audience is inherently narrow for those products. And one of the changes Nintendo made sometime between the Wii and the Switch is, I like that I phrase that as if that was an unknown period, is they really relaxed who has access to publish on their console. The Wii had very restrictive policies. You had to have physical fucking building, an office. Nintendo's dialed all that stuff back, and as a consequence, there's just more freedom for people who want to make games. And that is not inherently a bad thing. That's inherently a net positive. It's just, there are always going to be bad actors, and you can't legislate bad actors away. Like, we have this in our current legal system. You can't legislate bad actors away. Like, if you try to close the door on one scam, they just find another one. Because that's what scammers do. They scam. And so what you have to do is you have to create a situation where the marketplace is informed and is serviced in such a way that the bad actors aren't incentivized to continue. Because clearly Aldora Games is incentivized to release 2 to 3 games a week because they're still fucking doing it. I get their like cost of entry is super low, but they have time invested in it in theory. That's not free. They have to file with Nintendo all these fucking things. Like, they must be getting some return on it or they wouldn't do it. And do I think the people buying their products are probably satisfied with what they get out of it? No, they're probably not. But it's still happening. And which means there's still value in it. Which means there's still like some degree of, we just keep cranking this shit out because it's worth the effort to do it based on the return we're getting. And how do you make sure the audience has the right information, has the information they need? I can tell you how you don't do it. Sony's fucking website for the PlayStation, there are no screenshots on the website version of their shop. Why? I don't know. I don't fucking know. It's fucking stupid. But you can buy games from it, sight unseen, if you're an idiot. Having good shops, having good curation, like having games that are recommended. Maybe you let people recommend. Steam did this when they had like recommenders or whatever. These are people who you can choose to follow and they recommend games. Is that ripe for abuse? Yeah, it absolutely is ripe for abuse. But the system is already being abused. Like, that's the reality situation. The system is already being abused. Nintendo, I don't think, can create policies to keep the scammers away from scamming. It's like creating policies to tell fish they can't hang out in the water anymore. They're gonna do it. It's what they know. Unless they're a mud skipper. 'Cause they're fucking weird. So, rather than creating policies, like, they should create some policies. I think Seren's like, limit the number of bundles unless Nintendo expressly approves being in more than 3 bundles. Which that's your Ubisoft out, because Ubisoft makes bundles like it gives with such such enthusiasm, it is as if they receive sexual pleasure from the act. So maybe Ubisoft gets a pass from Nintendo, but they have to request it every time. We want to make another bundle. Fucking why? Well, this is what we want to put in it. Fine. But, like, that kind of restriction just creates a little bit of a barrier to the fucking shit where the game, I think was called, like, That Darn Cat, has, like, 39 bundles. Like, it just creates some degree of taking away one of the tools the bad actors leveraged. I'm not saying they shouldn't go after tools the bad actors are leveraging. I'm saying the bad actors will find new tools. So creating rules to try to create utopia will not work. You can close doors, but they'll make new windows. So what you need to do is you need to create a situation where the reward on the other side of that portal is not lucrative. And you do that in a fair and equitable way by trying to create a recommendations algorithm and trying to create an eShop experience that surfaces things that are inherently more valuable, more interesting, that you think will get customers more engaged. Because remember, Nintendo has a vested interest, and this is why I think Nintendo might actually do it, to the question of will they do something different. Nintendo has a vested interest in every sale that is made on the eShop. They receive money. They receive cash for every game that sells. And so they want to put games in front of you. But most importantly, they want to put games in front of you that you're going to buy. Because if they put 27 games in front of you in a row that you have no fucking interest in, and it doesn't make sense what human being on earth would have interest in them, all they're going to do is frustrate consumers to not go to the eShop to just browse. Like, they'll go to the eShop to buy the game they already know they want. And that's fine. Nintendo makes a shitload of money because they're usually the company involved in those games. But what they would love is for you to go to the eShop to buy a game and not know what you're going to buy. Because that way you're not beholden to the release schedule of games you care about. You could just go out there on a whim and say, I'm going to spend $5 and buy a $5 game. And Nintendo still gets their cut. That's what they want. They want an experience that is good enough that people will make impulse purchases. And the best way for them to do that is to show you front and center games that they think are good for you. Steam has gotten to the point where they can do this quite effectively, but Nintendo ain't Valve. I earnestly believe they will have been investing a lot of time and energy because they've seen what the eShop is. They know what the eShop is. Like, we know they know what the eShop is. And publishers and developers who are trying to do right by that system, trying to put good games on the eShop and are falling into the discovery pit, I'm sure are also talking to their Nintendo reps about, like, hey, this sucks. This is bad for my business. This is bad for your business. Like, let's find a way that we can make this better for both of us. Where, for all of us, for the customer as well, where they're being served things they might actually care about and therefore might actually make purchases and come back to the eShop later and make more purchases. Where Nintendo gets their cut, the publishers making the effort get a sale, and the customer looking for something to just do isn't frustrated and going and spending their time doing something else instead. That's why I think they must do something about it, but I don't think creating policies is going to achieve the objective that people want. Especially with hard and fast rules like get the AI slop out of there. Sure, I'll agree that Bimflee is a fucking piece of shit and has no effort put into it. But how do you write a policy that affects that but doesn't affect other stuff that is leveraging some components of AI but is still a creative experience of a game? It's still something worth seeing. It's worth experiencing, at least for somebody. Maybe not for you. Maybe you've set out the hard and fast rule that precludes your enjoyment of that product. But that there are people out there who would enjoy that product and should get the opportunity to experience it. That's hard. I say it's hard. It's impossible. It is an unachievable objective. It requires almost omniscience to achieve. And Nintendo doesn't know what the fuck they're doing a good portion of the time. So that's not going to happen. But yeah, like I find joy in the eShop's fucked. In this right now, like how fucked it is in some ways. again, another policy they could institute. Don't put the word hentai in your title. Or just don't SEO it. Like, you can put it in there, but we're just not going to process it on searches. They can do that right now. I guarantee you, if I submitted a game to Nintendo called Pornography Simulator, they'd be like, nope, fuck no, not happening. Get this shit out of here. Even if it was like a rated teen game, which I think with that title is lower rating as it could possibly get. I think just the title alone would bump it into a teen. But again, that's only going to solve this minor problem of every week or so, 2 games come out with hentai in the title. And again, as I repeat, aren't hentai. That's the forest for the trees solution. So like, it doesn't actually get to the heart of the issue. And that's really what it comes down to. I think I pretty much said by the way, I just burned an entire feature I've been mulling for a while and trying to figure out how to put together. That was all the content. That's all the content just in spoken word form. So, I haven't written an article for the site in about a year besides the RFN articles. And that made me kind of sad. And then I went back and read that fucking shit about, I saw 3 images and I'm upset. And, my article about Nintendo owes me an apology for the Quest to Camelot. And I realized, no, this is for the best. So yeah, that's it. Y'all got anything else to add?
I was like looking at some of the recent releases while you guys were talking, and I found this a guide to personal finance, how to manage your money, for just $3. So
back to our last email.
Yeah. So Ravio, here's your solution for budgeting. And it looks like it's got some AI slop in there. Like it only has 4 screenshots on the eShop page, but like I'm looking at the graph on that 4th screenshot, and and there's something up with like the plant behind the laptop that's on the picture here. It seems like very basic budgeting advice and some AI slop images. So that's great. Which
they could just bought from because again, we talk about like, well, you can't just legislate that shit out because maybe they just bought it from an image source, like a image licensing source. Like they didn't generate it. Yeah. There's also one about hair care for the same company.
Oh wow.
Yeah, if you go back to the list, you'll see it. The eShop is contains the multitudes is my way of describing the eShop. I have never not been surprised by the eShop at least once a month.
Creative writing, unlock your inner author, meditation and mindfulness, how to live in. This title is too long for in the moment.
It is.
Okay,
I know that one. Yeah, that one is just like quotes from rocks that you could buy at a store for decorating your fucking house. It was like they put like bad Buddha quotes on them. It's like that's not the Buddha actually never said that. That's not a real quote. That's shit. The mindfulness quotes would be like,
wow, this company is just really trying to help you improve as a person.
Yeah, no, they're offering a public service. They're really like they saw the world and said we can make it better, and I appreciate that. I appreciate their drive, their verve. That segment went long. An email that again, that is literally like the research I've been doing for a feature for over a year. I just put it out there for free. So I guess I fucked that up. But hey, emails. We have another one. We'll do it next week. Emails. They go to rfn at nintendoworldreport.com. That's rfn at nintendoworldreport.com. That is going to do it for us for this week. Greg, what is our music to close out the show?
Well, oftentimes it's quite a quiet period for game releases in January, but we do have quite a major 20th anniversary coming up on the 11th. That will be the 20th anniversary of the original GameCube release of Resident Evil 4, which
God.
obviously came far too late to really do anything to change, the commercial fortunes of the GameCube, and we were already kind of well into the kind of period where we were thinking about what the next system would be and all that kind of thing. But obviously Resident Evil 4 wasn't a GameCube exclusive for long, and it was PS2, it was on Wii, it was on many popular systems, and of course has been ported to modern platforms and indeed remade. It's essentially a new game but with the same scenarios and so forth on most current platforms. So it's ended up having a huge impact, kind of one of the fathers of the kind of third person shooter and all that kind of thing. Just this immensely kind of influential game that came at a really quite strange, development cycle where they kind of, it seemed like they scrapped some things and started over and kind of, got rid of a lot of the Resident Evil staples, just kind of starts by saying, oh, well, Umbrella, the arch villains of all the games, so forth, they're gone. You forget about them. And you kind of have this weird, more 24 type of scenario. I mean, it's Leon from Resident Evil 2, but Leon is Jack Bauer now, and it's the president's daughter instead of his own daughter, and it's in a very sort of dour part of Europe instead of in America. But yeah, it's a weird mix, but it's also just an undisputed kind of all-time classic, basically, that gets its start on GameCube. Now, the soundtrack, it's a little bit different from the preceding Resident Evil soundtracks. I think he'd go in for even more kind of atmosphere, more ambient rather than being a kind of B-movie score that some of the others were going for. And some of them, especially Resident Evil 2, has a very strong central motif that it just keeps using, and you don't have as much to kind of grab onto, as it were, with this. Some of it, I feel like there's obviously quite a bit of a Texas Chainsaw kind of reference with the the baghead kind of enemy, and you get Leon get killed with the chainsaw. It's got some of that kind of atonal weirdness of Texas Chainsaw. But this particular song that I've got here is something that it's still got some of its own Resi 4 specific kind of components, but it harkens more to the series, kind of past, and indeed, some of the stuff that you'd hear in 5 and 6 as well. And that's the Krauser boss fight. It's a kind of it's a game of set piece sort of moments. You kind of remember all the various ones. You're fighting the cave trolls and all the kind of stuff.
Oh yeah,
very much. Because the Lord of the Rings had been so big, and these games around 05, 06. We get fight the cave troll, fight the Balrog, fight Ridley as the Balrog, and with the falling phase of that fight, and the lag of Lord of the Rings stuff was very kind of pronounced in that was the effect that fed through in the years to come. But this is a more sort of standard kind of human combatant kind of scenario, but still kind of sticks out in the memory, and apparently so much that in fact with the remake they basically just used this song again, reorchestrated. They kind of made it more epic with a choir and stuff, but I guess they felt like it was important enough to more directly reference the original work in that case. So it says something about what they think about this particular, that this was an important kind of memorable part of that soundtrack.
Cool. All right, well, and that is time for us to go. Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.